Like a Hellcat. Coming like a Hellcat. Like a Hellcat. Coming like a hell. Like a Hellcat.
Walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been
I don't know what you want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side. My love. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose.
Hey guys, I have got some exciting news. So, Game have asked me to make a load of ads for them. Obviously, the best part is that they're giving me a load of money and sending me free game stuff. Doesn't really have anything to do with games. But thanks anyway. All I have to do in return is make a load of videos holding their stuff up to camera and saying the prices. That's it. I don't even have to leave the house. I don't even really have to wear trousers. I mean, I am wearing trousers. I don't have to. So in this video, I thought I would practice some advert skills. Whoa! No way! Off. Deals! Game. Deals. Wow! Deals. Wow. Game. The main sponsor. The only sponsor. $29.99, $49.99, $35.99, $16. So that's that. I can get back to making more game videos now, but watch out for more game videos that are also adverts about games. Thanks for the money, Game.
Hello guys and welcome to the UK Masters Hearthstone. My name's Sona and I'm joined by the inamorable Sottle. And that's a word I just made up because you cannot describe this man with mere human words. You've got to make up words. Now Sottle,
Yes.
before we get into the meat and potatoes of the action for this evening, how was BlizzCon?
Oh, dude, BlizzCon was amazing. Like, I had no idea what to expect going in because I'm not a huge Blizzard nerd like most people are, but it turns out being in a place with just thousands and thousands of gaming nerds in general and like-minded people was an awesome experience, and just casting in front of a screaming, baying live audience is just insane. So yeah, I had a blast, but I'm happy to be back on home turf casting some equally
high
exciting
level.
games of Hearthstone.
The highest level is the UK scene. Of course, that's the reason we can't have a live audience here in the Multiplay Studios. There's too many baying women looking for Sottle all of the time. Now, as you say, Sottle, we will be getting into the first game of the day. Unfortunately, we actually won't be getting into the first game of the day. Pesty versus Cypher is a forfeit from Cypher, as he's unable to compete because he's competing in a different tournament at the moment. So Pesty goes through, wins that game, and that means he's 2-1 across the board, I believe.
I believe so. That seems right. Yep.
Second game. Let's skip that page.
Moving on.
Get straight. Well, there's no real point talking about a game that didn't happen.
We could just make up the results.
Yeah.
talk
Well.
about games.
Okay. Should we do it? So it's Warrior, Druid, Mage, Shaman on Pesty's side, and it's Shaman, Druid, Hunter. I'll be Pesty. You be Cypher.
Okay.
I'm gonna ban your Shaman away, man.
All right.
Who are you banning for me?
I think I'm good. Shaman was the wrong ban, by the way. I'm going to ban your Warrior.
Okay. So I'll take Druid into the first matchup.
I'm taking Warrior.
Okay. So it's Druid into Warrior. I'm playing
Can I
Token
just say
Fandral.
that this entire thing is irrelevant
Yeah.
because I'm playing on one side and you're playing on the other. So matchups, regardless, I'm just going to 3-0 you. It's going to happen.
I don't know what you're talking about, mate. I'm ranked 2 wild. I'm not ranked 2 wild. I've won arena games in the past. Anyway, yes.
Actual games.
Yeah, actual whole games of arena, not against bots or anything like that. Let's get into the second game. It's Ball Control versus Pesty. Now, Pesty, of course, coming off a dominant win. In that last game, he's 2-1 up. Ball Control sitting at 2-3. Really needs to start chaining these wins together to be in for a chance to get playoffs.
And it's amazing, honestly, because Ball Control has been the most dominant player in the UK scene over the whole of 2016. Essentially, he ESL back-to-back Premiership qualifications as my headphones just fall out, and then he's just been crushing it in terms of the UK scene. Big finishes at DreamHack as well, but this seems to be the one tournament in the UK that he hasn't quite sunk his teeth into yet.
Yeah.
So looking forward to him making a comeback if possible.
He was 1-3 down last week and then came back to beat out, I've got it written down here somewhere, Cypher actually, who is 1-4 now. 1-5 because he just lost as well. I forgot about that. Getting that win, sometimes it's all about momentum in these sorts of games. You get on a winning streak, you start to feel good about your plays, you start to not doubt yourself as much and second guess the sort of plays you make.
Yeah, I mean, week to week, I don't know how much momentum plays into it, but it can at least show that you are, you're playing well. You also maybe found a lineup strategy that you're happy with, like a pick and ban strategy that you're finding a work in the tournament if you're not particularly tailoring to individual players. So sure, he'll be happy to get a win under his belt, but still, he'll be disappointed at the spot he was in. He would have been coming into this expecting to be, topping the rankings at this stage. So 2-3, not a great record for him.
Ting Ting is, of course, top of the rankings at 4-0, yet to lose a series against any of these guys. Now, let's talk a bit about Pesty. He's 2-1. It was 1-1, of course, before the default win earlier today. It was a long time ago that actually he played in the UK Masters, at least 2 or 3 weeks the last time he played. Is that going to have a hampering effect on him, or do you think he's going to have, kept up his play over the last couple of weeks?
It's tough with Pesty because he's a very talented Hearthstone player, but he's also primarily a Wild player.
Yeah.
Like this is not a joke. Like he just prefers the format.
I can't blame him. Wild's fun.
He just likes that meta. He has a personal relationship with Dr. Boom. Like I don't know what it is. Something about him just loves playing Wild. So we can see looking now, like his highest rank at the moment is rank 7 on Wild. He's higher ranked on Wild than he is in Standard. So when he's got time off, weeks off from this competition, probably tempted just to go back and play Wild, and that doesn't really help him coming into these. So he's going to have to have focused in on the Standard meta yet again, and he's actually brought some of the more interesting decks as a lineup to this week, having to submit 2 different lineups.
Yeah, he is bringing Warrior, Druid, Mage, and Shaman.
Doesn't sound all that interesting on the surface, but for his game that we saw him crush Cypher in, he brought Freeze Mage as his mage
Yeah.
deck. So he's actually brought some twists. His Druid deck.
That's where I made my mistake.
Yeah, his Druid deck in that lineup as well wasn't a Malagos Druid. It was just kind of like a chunky ramp Druid with extra minions as well. So he is, has some unique ideas on the meta, which could come from that experience in Wild that he has, just making him look at the game in a slightly different way.
Talking about sort of the meta at the moment, do you think it changes anything after BlizzCon? They were kind of the decks we expected to see played by most of the top players. Is it just going to be the same meta?
It's hard to say. I think people are getting a little bit scared of Warrior. A couple of people have not brought Warrior to this tournament because they think that people bring lineups to try and force Warrior out, which is more of a conquest strategy, but still not something that you want to expose yourself to in Last Hero Standing. The other big story of BlizzCon was kind of the downfall of Druid. We saw Pavel in particular have this incredible record against Druid. I think 14-1 overall he went against Druid, which I don't think that's any testament to the deck, but I think it's a wake-up call to players to say, if you cannot play this deck at the highest level, it will punish you. Don't just bring it thinking you can coast through on it. You need to make sure your Druid play is on point if you're going to bring it to the tournament.
Do you think that's why perhaps people are mixing and matching slightly more? Not always seeing that Malagos Druid, some people playing Token Druid, some people playing those Ramp Druids. We've seen a lot of Beast Druid on ladder as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there are some Druid decks available. I think Violet Teacher Druid is a little bit more forgiving, easier to play than Malagos Druid because you can occupy the board a bit quicker. Your chance to just blow out the game with Innovate is a lot higher, whereas Malagos Druid is a very high skill cap, high reward deck.
Yeah.
I think it's the best build if you can pilot it perfectly, but much like Grim Patron Warrior, like way back in the day, you really needed to be on point with it, otherwise the deck will just punish you.
Another deck that I do not mind being in Wild. Keep that there. I don't want to bring Grim Patron back. Please don't bring it back into meta. It's so painful. You just want the friendship.
Yeah.
It's like, you just like hearing everyone get in here. Anyway, I'm afraid, guys, we are going to have to take a quite a long break before we get into the second game of the night because, of course, we had that forfeit earlier on. I think it's going to be about 40 minutes or so. So we will be back at about 8 o'clock with the second game between Ball Control and Pesty. Thank you very much for watching, and make sure you tune in again then at about 8 o'clock to see our second game of the night.
No, there ain't no stopping us. Fly without a boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star.
Didn't even get to cross.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. You're looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get a glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't. Shining like it's neon. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars.
Didn't even get to cross.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Hello guys and welcome back to the UK Masters. 40 minutes passed in a flash. Obviously we put an Nosdormu down on the battlefield and got things sped up slightly for you as we will get into the next matchup very quickly. Ball Control versus Pesty. Hey, at least I was paying attention to the camera when we went live and wasn't like clicking on some random stuff on the ground. Anyway, I am Son, I'm joined by Sottle, and it will be Ball Control up against Pesty pretty soon. They're just finishing up their practice match now, so we should be into the action in just a couple of minutes' time.
Yeah, I mean, really looking forward to it. We gave Ball Control and Pesty an intro beforehand, but in case you weren't here, of course, this is Ball Control, probably the most dominant player in the scene right now. He really took over from Cypher, who was dominant in 2015, who himself took over from some of the older names. Seems weird saying the older names about Blackout and Green Sheep.
Oh, good old Blackout and Green Sheep.
They're both like half my age, but they are the elder statesmen of UK Hearthstone at least. But the torch has been passed, and Ball Control is really the dominant force in the UK scene right now, but not in this tournament.
Not in this tournament at all. He's only 2 and 3, Tinting, the dominant player in the UK Masters at the moment, and maybe it's another changing of the guards. We are into the action. Both the Shamans band out here, and it's Druid versus Druid to start us off.
Is indeed, and Ball Control looking at a hand with not a great deal of ramp in it. Pesty, we can see, although you can't just yet, does have the Innovate and Maya Keeper.
No, we can. It's only when Discover. We can't see it when Discover happens.
Okay,
Yeah, so Innovate and Maya Keeper, as you say, in hand. Both of them, you'd assume to be playing that Malagos Druid. I mean, Ball Control is with the Moonfire, but Pesty's hand looks pretty Malagosy to me as well.
It does, yeah. Pesty in his default game against Cypher did choose to queue up or submit a pure ramp druid, really, without the Malagos in there, just Ancient of Wars and Ragnaros and a bunch of big minions, but it does look like this could be a different list this time around. Ball Control did end up mulliganing the majority of his hand, does pick up the Wild Growth to get rewarded for it. He's actually going to go for pressure with the Living Roots early on, which can get a lot of work done against Druid because they want to spend so much of the early turns ramping and playing Raven Idols and things like that, that this 1-mana card can sometimes get into 6 to 8 damage.
So you hear a lot of the time that perhaps you don't want to use Raven Idol early on, you want to save it for when you need an answer to something. Why do you Living Roots there instead of Raven Idling and just try to cycle through spells? So
Raven Idol, the longer you wait to use Raven Idol, for one, the more information you get about what you need. Do you want to pick a minion, for example? If your hand runs dry, what particular spells do you need? Furthermore, you can also just combine it with Fandral later in the game if it gets to that point. And also, like I said, Druid just doesn't really have answers to a couple of 1/1s on the board, especially when they want to be Wild Growthing and Maya Keepering in the early game. So it just pushes through a lot of damage a lot of the time.
That it does. Ball Control did get that Maya... Oh, no, sorry. Pesty got that Maya Keeper. I'm getting confused between our 3 different monitors here. Pesty got the Maya Keeper out, will be ramping himself up. Does have the Azure Drake next turn as well, if he wants to start just getting through that card draw. Now, difficult decision here for Ball Control. He can decide to get rid of that Maya Keeper, or he can use that Raven Idol and start looking to see if he needs spells. We'll just swipe away the Maya Keeper and keep going base with those 2 Living Roots.
Yeah, I don't mind this, honestly. It's consistent with his line, because playing the 1/1s on the board with the Living Roots early was by no means a given, but he's done it for this kind of exact purpose, just to try and push through early damage with them and establish himself as the aggressor. So that swipe backs up that strategy nicely. If another big minion was to come down soon, he has Raven Idol to fish for removal, and of course he does have the Mulch to fall back on as well.
That he does. Mulch may be an answer here for Azure Drake, but you have got Rag in the hand for Pesty, so he'll be looking towards that soon. It is just going to be Nourish for cards, try and get more in your hand, more answers to anything that Pesty puts down. Pesty as well has the Nourish in hand, so he can be looking perhaps just to get himself a little bit more card advantage as we get later on, and now an Arcane Giant as well.
Decision for Pesty is actually a little bit more difficult, and yeah, he does go for the crystals here, so both of these players had Nourish and Ragnaros in their hand, and one chose to go for cards, the other chose to go for the ramp. I think from Pesty's perspective, he already had the second big minion with the Arcane Giant in his hand. He also has 2 rats that he can use for card draw if he wants as well. So he looked at that hand and said, I need mana to start playing these bombs a lot more than I need the card draw. Just went ahead and jammed the mana, and Rag is going to come down immediately in this situation, more than likely.
You can see the difference as well. Ball Control there uses Emperor Therissian. Of course, not a bad play at all. You're still reducing all of that cost across the board, but doesn't have the option to go Rag this turn. Pesty will, and that can definitely start swinging the board in his favor.
So ball control there, you saw just poking the 1-1 back and forth, not really sure where to send it. Does choose to trade in the end, and that's because he's staring at the Blood Mage Thalnos and Living Roots in his hand, which can effectively be used to take care of that as long as that 1 damage gets through. But probably should have thought about his whole turn in advance there, because the signals that he was deciding where to attack actually reveals some information.
So Raven Idol into Raven Idol is the big play that you can do. Innovate, Savagery, and Savage Roar are the cards here for
Innovate's
Pesty.
huge.
Yeah, Innovate is
so
massive.
huge. Because now he can use the Rats to take care of this Emperor. Still has the Innovate to net mana back and drop an Arcane Giant on the board. So second Arcane Giant picked up as well now, with 2 Rats and an Innovate in hand. That's so huge for Pesty right now.
Definitely gives him a big board swing. Of course, still Rag in hand for ball control, sitting at 7 mana at the moment. He's got a free Raven Idol. He's got that Tarusian Living Roots Blood Mage Thalnos Living Roots combo that you talked about as well, and his own Arcane Giant alongside a Mulch. So does have the ability to answer some of this threat coming out from Pesty.
Yeah, but importantly for Pesty, he's got these Arcane Giants down, or at least one of them, cheaply. So the Mulch isn't like a huge tempo swing against him. It's just, 2 mana for 3 mana in this case. And if the Mulch is used in this situation, he can now back that up with Rag on a following turn.
It's going to be Raven Idol looking for the spells, and this is what we talked about, looking for answers later on. You've got more information. Mark of the Wild, Living Roots, and Savage Roar, the options here for ball control. What do you take if you're him?
Not a great pull, honestly. I mean, Living Roots is probably the best card here. It's a card that you choose to play in your deck, so you're obviously valuing it above the other 2, but right now you already have a Living Roots in your hand for 0, so it doesn't really give you that much flexibility, that many options in your hand. Even pairing the 2 together with the Blood Mage only gets you 6 damage onto the Arcane Giant, so you can't take care of it that way. So he is taking it just for the utility. At the end of the day, it's another cheap spell that you can discount the Giant with, but Mulch having been used here means that the Ragnaros is free to run wild on this board. With that annoying 1-1 Blood Mage on the board, it's a much less attractive prospect.
A 1 in 3 shot here for the Rag if he does put it down. Really wants to, well, you could say 2 in 3 because face is okay as well, but you really want to be taking that Arcane Giant off the board if you can. Does have a second Arcane Giant and a swipe in hand, so could swipe face an Arcane Giant, could swipe and use the Wrath as well to start trying to take off that Arcane Giant. That's exactly what he's going to do. Even Hero powering up here at the end just to make sure he can take out that Arcane Giant.
With Swipe Wrath Hero Power, that gives him enough of a discount on the Arcane Giant to drop that as well, so he gets a full swing on the board. The other option would have just been to develop the minions alongside the Wrath, so Wrath the Blood Mage to cycle and drop Tuskar Jouster and the Arcane Giant. But he's choosing, this is just a full board swing, and pretty soon, I'm sure, we've been talking about these Rags for a while, but I'm fairly sure they're going to have to start going off at some point.
Is that Tuskar Jouster?
That is Tuskar Jouster.
Oh, is it? Okay, because I thought it was, and I looked at it and just I can't quite make out the card art from here, so making sure it was a card. We'll see if he plays it just to make sure, but yeah, it's going to be the Rag coming down, as you say, looking for the swing onto the Arcane Giant. That's exactly where you want it landing. Ball control is so much more important here, but the second Rag comes out into Hero Power as well, so at least 1 damage to face this turn, which is what Pesty wants. This is a 50-50 shot, and the Rag, well, Pesty will be playing it hits the enemy Rag as well. There we go. Big swing of tempo for Pesty.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of nice to see. We've been seen a lot of high-level matches decided by Ragnaros 50-50s recently, but essentially if you look at what just happened there, both players won their 50-50, so after all said and done with the Rags, we're kind of just right back where we were to start with. And Ball Control is going to have to go fishing here with the Raven Idol, looking to pick up an answer. Doesn't quite get it, though, but the Arcane Giant can come down here. This has been a really hard-hitting Druid match. Like, all the bombs have come out early, and they've just been slugging it out from start to finish.
And having Fandral into Living Roots there, actually getting those 2 1-1s on the board allows him a bit of safety against this Rag, because you're reducing the chance it goes face, you're reducing the chance it hits out your Arcane Giant, and you have a Savage Roar in hand for next turn as well. So there is also always the possibility that Ball Control, if Pesty doesn't gain good control of the board here, doesn't put down that Ancient of War, Ball Control could just swing for lethal.
Yeah, and crucially, you have a Fandral on the board as well as an 8-8, so even if the Rag shot does hit the 8-8, if there isn't removal for the Fandral, suddenly you can pick up Nourish, your Druid of the Saber is active alongside that Savage Roar, like all kinds of nonsense can happen, so this is a great play from Ball Control just to create some significant board tension, make Pesty's situation awkward. Pesty doesn't have the necessary tools to react right now.
It really does depend where this Rag hits, because If it goes towards that Arcane Giant, it negates the ability to get through that Ancient Wall, really. Taking out one of the living roots is vital as well. Comes down, hits the Arcane Giant. That is very powerful for Pesty, and now he's going to have to try and work out how he gets control of this board state once again.
So with Druid of the Saber charging as a 3-2 in this situation, he can use Druid of the Saber's Savage Roar, which will give him 8 damage between the 1-1 and the Saber charging in. He can use his face to finish it off, but he's going to start off with the Wrath, gets immediately rewarded by picking up Wrath number 2, so he will be able to punch through here. The Wrath, Druid of the Saber, and Savage Roar means just his face will be able to eliminate the rest of the Ancient of War, and 5, 8, 13 damage will go face. He's very, very close to just having lethal here.
He is. I'm wondering if he's thinking about maybe trying to take out that Rag as well. Instead of just going face, because he knows that both the Arcane Giants will be playing. The Moonfire off the top is beautiful. Will play the Druid of the Saber. Savage Roar comes out as well. Be able to clear that out. Face, as you say, and puts in for 13 damage to face. But it actually looks like he might go Rag here.
He's 1 damage off lethal.
Yeah.
I cannot understand why you would respect the Ragnaros in this situation. Does just jam it all to face. This means that Pesty needs to gain at least the 1 life with his hero power just to stay out of range now.
So it has got the Living Roots in hand. Wild Growth to cycle.
You know what else he has? A Tuskar Jouster.
Nothing wrong with a good Tuskar Jouster. Like that's the thing with Mulch. Sometimes you give your opposition something amazing, and sometimes you give them something absolutely poo, basically. Like, just can't do anything in this sort of matchup. It will be Feral Rage that gets him a bunch of armor and keeps him out of range for this turn. But once again, he is in a precarious spot indeed. Looking for the Rag onto that Fandral more than anything else.
Yeah, still no guaranteed answer to the Fandral, so, you know, chance for it to go absolutely wild here. But Rag might have something to say about it. Doesn't.
Well, if it's going to go wild, Pesty is the guy to know how to go wild.
Top meme.
Thanks,
well
man.
done.
Thanks. So Malagos comes out. Malagos into Moonfire into attack is a 1-off still. It's incredibly close. You have to assume there's going to be another Feral Rage in Pesty's deck somewhere as well. So he will be able to gain 8 health. But it actually looks like now he is respecting the Rag.
Yeah, I mean,
takes that out.
This situation is dramatically different because now you just have a Malagos on the board. So furthermore, if the Rag goes face, then that just ends the game.
Here we go.
But yeah, I mean, the Tuskar could be huge here just to get some more life. And he does hit it. Picks up the Drake against the Barnes, meaning he is stabilizing now. And, you know, just one individual burn spell off the top for ball control is now just not lethal in this situation.
It's so close, though, between these two guys. And as you say, a lot of it comes down to how early on some of the big threats were burnt. You know, Arcane Giants came down early. Rags came down early. Nourish off the top with the Azure Drake as well. Just not getting what he wants. Now, do you Nourish for card draw just so you have more next turn? Or do you Azure Drake so you've got a little bit more spell power on the board in case you want to try and go for that burst?
Well, the problem is he's just dead on the board right now, right? Like, he's at 6 health. There's a 5/5 in play, so he needs to Nourish. I'm not sure if he's used both Innovates.
No, he's only used one.
The only way he lives is to Nourish into Innovate plus Removal to be able to take care of this 5/5 without taking damage.
That is incredible that actually ball control might lose it from here. It looked like he was dominant in the game. It looked like he had total control of everything that was happening, but Pesty bringing out the wild card in the Tuskar Jouster kept himself alive, and now looks to be a winning game 1.
Yeah, importantly, ball control doesn't know that he's dead. From his perspective, he can go up to 7 with the hero power, down to 2 after the attack, so he will not know that he is out of range. So he is just going to push face here, gain the 1 with the hero power, not take the out with the Drake and the Nourish. But from his perspective, this is a perfectly reasonable play to win the game.
Living Roots. Just do it for the BM. Do it for the BM.
Pesty's a very dignified young man. He doesn't go into any of this BM business. But after what was one of the crazier Druid mirrors that I have seen, Pesty taking a 1-game advantage over ball control and potentially sets up Druid, which is one of the power decks now, to sweep 3-0 in this position.
Yeah, you said that a lot of people perhaps stepping away from Druid if they couldn't play it to the highest level. Pesty there showed that he was able to control the... Well, okay, he was a little bit fortunate at points, but a lot of the time he was making the right play in the situation, trying to read what his opponent had in the hand.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people will actually get themselves away from Druid. I think everyone knows that it's potentially the best deck in the game, and I think most pro Hearthstone players are too stubborn to admit that, you know, they're not playing a deck optimally, and they'll just keep bringing it. So we should expect to see a lot more of it. I think every 8 out of 8 in this tournament have brought
8 out
Druid,
of
so
8.
no great surprises there. But Pesty navigated that pretty well. He had a number of tricky Arcane Giant turns to find his way through. Did it well. The Nourish for mana decision in the early game I like a lot. Really established him as the aggressor after that Living Roots pressure wore off early, and great performance from him in game 1.
Definitely, and he held off on the Rag a little bit as well, waited to see what's coming out on the board. Now it is going to be Ball Control bringing out his Hunter into Pesty's Druid once again. This matchup generally, would you say Hunter wins it out in the early game and then sort of we see the Druid coming into late game if he can maintain his health?
Yeah, it depends on the build. I mean, Hunter will definitely want to get on the board early, start pressuring the Druid as much as possible, not give them all the time in the world to set up, but it can often come down to the late game package. Is it the pure aggressive base Hunter? Is it a more mid-rangey build with High Mane, Stranglethorn Tigers, Ragnaros? Because those are the minions that give Druids nightmares. Those are the ones that they just cannot beat whatsoever.
Well, will be
there's a High Mane
early on for ball. Yeah, and there's a High Mane in there as well, I should say. Pesty's going to pop that Raven Idol quickly. Discovers a Swipe, a Wrath, and a Mulch. So pretty good discovery for him there.
Yeah, definitely what you want in this kind of situation. Innovate would have been the dream, just to be able to get that early Fandral out and just go nuts with the Wrath that he already had. But picking up small removals against Hunter is never the end of the world because, like I said, the one thing that you don't want to happen is just get beaten up by Secret Keepers and huge Toads and nonsense like that in the early game.
So why do you choose Wrath instead of something like a Swipe?
It's just more flexible. He has Fandral in his hand as well already, so it's just easier to weave in with some of the other cards that he has. Swipe, not hugely effective against Hunter most of the time. Most of their minions are 2 health, 3 health, and upwards, so it's not as effective as it is against some token decks and things like Zoo. So Wrath, just a much more flexible card.
Yeah, of course, can hit that Kindly Grandmother if you want, but I'm not sure he'll like the surprise that comes out of it. It's a little bit of a difficult choice here for Pesty, because you can Wrath in if you want to. You can just hero power up and keep yourself a little bit healthier. You're only taking 1 damage a turn. It's not the big, the longest clock in all honesty. But I'm not 100% sure as to how he's going to play here.
Yeah, it's an awkward hand. He really wouldn't have wanted to see Grandmother come down on this turn. He would have liked it to be a secret turn or, Huge Toad, King's Elec, one of these cards. They're rotating out of Hunter a little bit, but, Pesty would have been able to interact with them, and I guess that goes some way to tell you why they are rotating out in favor of Kindly Grandmother, because this Grandmother has put Pesty in a very awkward spot, and it is just Hero Power Pass in the end, which opens the door to coin Houndmaster from Boar Control. And this is a crushing turn now.
Why is the Grandmother a beast? Every time I face Hunter on ladder, the Grandmother has...
So, the last cast I did that involved a Kindly Grandmother being played, I said, does that outfit fool anyone? Apparently, yes, it fools you. That is a wolf. Look, it's clearly a wolf.
Yes, and I understand that, the story. It's from Red Riding Hood, obviously.
You don't need to understand the story. Look at it.
I don't judge by looks, man.
Okay.
I don't judge by looks.
Wow, sorry.
It doesn't matter how you look. That's why I cast with you.
Allow me to check my privilege real quick.
Please do, Soso. So Fandral into Wrath onto the Houndmaster looks to be the play here. Of course, Fandral does trade into that Kindly Grandmother, but making Ball Control actually have to make that decision himself allows Pesty a little bit more freedom as to how he trades here. Now, Quickshot will come out, and the Kindly Grandmother will take out Fandral, and surprise, surprise, there was a wolf in sheep's clothing underneath.
Yeah, I mean...
See, that's a beast.
Agreed. I have no dispute. But you saw the effect that Fandral had on the game, where suddenly it looked like it was game over. There was a Houndmastered minion beating down at the Druid, picked up the Innovate to pair with the Fandral, and then suddenly Ball Control was forced to just slow down completely and respect the Fandral because you have to kill it, just developing a secret on this turn to potentially line up against an Azure Drake that Pesty has potential to play, along with the Snipe, but now suddenly that Fandral window has opened for Pesty and he needs to leap through it here and try and get himself onto the board.
So if you're Pesty, what secrets do you... Oh, gonna have a Hogger come out. If you're Pesty, Hoffer, sorry. What secrets do you play around specifically, and which ones do you not really mind being on the board?
I mean, Catrick is terrifying. Yeah. That thing just hurts, and so you generally want to proc it in a situation where you are able to deal with the cat at the same turn. Snipe generally doesn't worry you too much unless you're already colossally behind on tempo. An Explosive Trap is pretty much completely irrelevant to a Druid a lot of the time, so he gets the good news here that it is a Snipe, at least the first one. That does allow the Huffer to trade, but honestly, I think if Pesty sees the Huffer trade in this situation, he's kind of okay with that. He doesn't want a 4-2 beating him in the face over and over again. The thing that he's not going to be okay with is the high main that's going to follow it up.
Yeah, definitely. High main's so powerful as a card. It's why we see a lot of hunters run Barnes as well, because if you Barnes into a high main, basically game over like 9 times out of 10, just because it's too much board control. Now, Huffer went face. This is because there's a freezing trap for board control, but that. Like if you're Pesty here, you don't really mind Arcade Giant getting knocked back to your hand. It's not the best situation, but it's going to be reduced in mana anyway because of all the spells you cast, and you have quite a few spells in hand as well to try and cycle through. Yeah,
the problem is you need something immediately to react to this board right now. So getting anything frozen in that situation is a nightmare because you were trying to rely on that minion to fight for the board for you. But you're right, like Arcane Giant isn't the worst thing in the world. There's potential if he can stabilize here that it will be able to be replayed, but stabilization stations are a long way away when Pesty is going to be staring down bow damage, hero power damage, and now all of that is going to be followed up by Ragnaros.
Ragnaros next turn makes this incredibly difficult for Pesty to work around. Does have swipe, but you don't really want to swipe anything on board. Has his own rag as well. This might even just be an Ancient of War turn. Just try and get the taunt lines up. Try and stop the aggressive plays coming out from Boar. You're still taking at least 2 damage a turn anyway. And that Ancient of War might fall to the rag. You can take him out with what you've got on board as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's thinking about Ragnaros coming down. Ragnaros is such a power card in the meta right now, possibly just the best card in the game at the moment. So anytime it rolls into turn 8 against any deck that has any kind of reputation for playing Ragnaros, you need to consider how you're dealing with it. But right now, Pesty's line is just to try and get some sort of grip on this board, because if he can do that, he has double Feral Rage in his hand to gain 16. So the hero power clock is not on him right now as long as he doesn't die this turn.
And Boar is only 1 away from lethal this turn, actually. He, if he clears that Ancient of War off, puts the rag down, and then hero powers, well, he can't hero power, so he's 3 away from lethal.
In the magical world where he has 10 mana.
Yeah, if only. 10 mana, turn 8. I just assumed he was playing Druid.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, double Feral Rage puts him out of the way. He will next turn have 7 damage and the rag still on board, so still in a pretty good position. It really depends on how Pesty's able to stabilize after putting that double Feral Rage down. Is he able to actually get a board state out of that, or is he just going to be taken out? And this is actually the trade that I was talking about. So trades everything in, chucks the rag down as well. Sitting pretty only 3 health away from taking Pesty down.
Yep, and he did have another option that turn of potentially just hitting the Ancient of War with the bow and just keeping his high main intact, just dropping the rag, and then the rag either takes care of the 5/7 or hits face. But I think looking at the board state that he's left remaining here, you can understand why take that kind of risk. He's just gone for the consistent play. Ragnaros in play. Even if that's removed, he's representing enough damage to push lethal through on the next turn. So don't think Pesty really has too many answers to this board state.
Now, the only thing you might think of is something like Azure Drake into Swipe, but even that would leave the Ragnaros on board. You'd get rid of everything else, and you're taking the luck of whether the rag hits face or whether it hits the Azure Drake. And Ball Control still has a quick shot in his deck. Well, we can assume he's only played 1 thus far. Double Kill Command, as far as I know, is still in that deck as well. So he's got all the answers he needs to take out this Druid.
Sure has. Pesty goes digging with the Wild Growth. He can gain 16 still with the Feral Rages, but has nothing to occupy the board alongside that, which means he's taking the guaranteed 8 from the rag, and he would just be staring down lethal again, potentially. Looks like that is the play he's going to go for
with hero power,
with no better answer. That's true.
17 with hero power, and he is only facing up 15. So, it's close, close. All it takes is a single damaging spell here. It's an infested wolf, so not going to have that out. The question is, do you just leave this as your board state in hero power, or do you start to try and control the board a little bit more? It looks like he's going all out with that infested wolf coming down as well. Just putting all the cards out into the ether and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that this really loses to is like the sudden miracle Yogg that might still be in Pesty's deck, because you've literally just committed all your resources. So if Yogg does do something completely ridiculous, if it's even in the deck in the first place, but that's such a minor concern that it's probably better to play around more reasonable things like, Drake Swipe Innovate Mulch is more likely than Yogg dealing with this board.
Right, he's going to know to look to see if he has any answers. Living Roots, Azure Drake, And Raven Idol, you Raven Idol just to see what you can get, but I don't really think there's much for Pesty left here. Innovate Feral Rage still doesn't keep him alive. Like, there's nothing. There's no answers that Pesty can find in any Druid deck that would answer this.
On the plus side, he has managed, as you said, to get that frozen Arcane Giant back down to 0 mana.
Yeah, that's the important thing, man.
Unfortunately, he's a little bit dead.
So actually that freezing trap making a much bigger impact than perhaps it could have done, meaning that he was able to keep that board state in his favor. Board control, gonna go all 1-1 here against Pesty, as Pesty just tries to work out any way out of this, but there's nothing you can do, Pesty. Even with the swipe, he leaves too much on the board of the Ragnaros. Arcane Giant comes out, but there's the concede as well from Pesty. So board control will even out at 1-1. And we've had a Druid and a Druid fall thus far. Hunter versus Warrior or Mage next here for Pesty.
Yeah, and the Hunter is reasonably well placed, you'd have to say, against the Warrior, you know, particularly because we saw it's a high main build, so, you know, having those aggressive Hunter decks with the extra chunk in the late game, really big deal against Warriors. But Mage, if it's a tempo Mage, potentially has a lot of work to get done against Hunter because, you know, Flame Waker turns, Arcane Missiles turns, they can deal with Cat Trick so effectively on their own terms with Flame Waker and Arcane Missiles that a lot of the time the Mage is heavily favored in that matchup.
It looks like it is going to be the Tempo Mage coming out. Barnes there as well. Are you playing, if you're a normal Tempo Mage player, say on ladder, you know, higher-ish ranks, are you playing Archmage Antonidas, or are you just going pure Tempo?
There's so many builds of Tempo Mage now that it's hard to say. I mean, even like Barnes or no Barnes is a question mark. The particular makeup of the 1 mana spells that you play is a question mark. Babbling Book or no Babbling Book is a question mark.
If you're Pavel, like Babbling
Right,
Book,
I mean,
30 of them. Who needs any other cards?
I still personally don't like the card, but I'd expect everyone on ladder to be playing it right now based on what we saw recently at BlizzCon. But then even like Kabbalist Tome and Archmage Antonidas are other questions, and they usually go together. You're normally, you know, if you're playing Antonidas, you're building a more late game version of the deck, so you're including both of them. So we'll see what Pesty has come up with here in terms of his particular build.
We'll have that Firelands Portal as well. Some people play 2, some people play 1. That's, yeah, unfortunate for Pesty. Getting that Leok out meant that he can trade nicely, and it makes it very difficult for Pesty to deal with this board as well. You know, you've got Frostbolt, but do you Frostbolt and then coin into killing the Leok, or do you just Frostbolt out that hungry wolf and leave the Leok on board?
Yeah, I think I like this a little bit more because it gives him the chance just to contest the 3-4 with the Barnes on the following turn if there isn't a lot more pressure coming down. If Houndmaster comes down, you're kind of boned either way, so it's not really worth considering what happens there. That's probably just game losing in this situation. But yeah, I think I like this because the 3-4 can come down and contest a lot more effectively against the 2-4 than potentially the 3-2.
And I assume it will be a Barnes play here. Can Arcane Intellect? He's only facing 4 damage next turn, along with Hero Power, of course, make it 6. But Barnes will fall. Let's see what minion this brings out of the depths. It's a Water Elemental, which actually isn't the end of the world, although you probably just trade into it with a Kindly Grandmother.
Yeah, it also gives us our first kind of indication as to what style of build this is. And it looks like with the Water Elemental in there, if I had to guess at this point, then it would be kind of tilted towards what we saw Pavel play, which was lots of extra minions, Water Elementals, Faceless Summoners, all that kind of thing. So seeing the Water Elemental come out there gives us our first clue as to Pesty's actual build of Tempo Mage here, which I have to say, the very minion-heavy build, a little bit weaker against Hunter than the very spell-heavy build.
Why is that? Why is the minion heavy build less strong?
Because, you know, against Hunter, quite often just spending mana on stats is weak. Because they will just ignore stats and go face, and you'll be too far behind. So, you know, 6 mana, 5/5 summon a 3-drop, 4 mana, 3/6, purely on stats on the board, incredible value plays. Most of the time, Hunter just doesn't really give a damn. Yeah, exactly.
Actually using Unleash the Hounds to take out Leok, which is quite a good play, in all honesty, being able to get out that Leok. I was going to say it's interesting because I thought you could trade him with a kind of Grandmother. Wants to keep his kill command in his back pocket as well to try and get that lethal damage later on. Will trade in, gets a little bit more pain onto Betsy's face. And now we're going to have to see how Pesty decides to deal with it.
Sorry, did you just say Betsy?
I did, okay? But I tried to correct it straight away. Sometimes Sometimes I make mistakes, okay? It's Pesty, obviously.
I mean,
Maybe we should call him Betsy from now on.
I'm good with mistakes. It's just that is a particularly hilarious mistake.
I blame it on this tie. I'm not used to wearing ties anymore.
Okay.
It's too tight on me.
You just had kindly grandmother on the. Is
Yeah,
your grandmother's name Betsy? by
No,
any
oh,
chance?
that would be serendipity at its finest. Now, Savannah Hymen is down violence. Porter will deal with that, but you still. Oh, she goes to the Leok instead. And it's a Grim Patron. You have your wish. He's back into the meta. Betsy, no, Betsy has played him here.
Yeah, unfortunately, easy kill for ball control. Even if he didn't have the removal in hand, he had the option to take care of it. Of course, Grim Patron with Mage Hero power is a pretty effective tool. You know, Patron Warriors for a while did play that thinly, trying to pick up the Mage Hero power first and foremost, as well as life tap. So leaving the Mage with that in play, even when you're as aggressive as a Hunter is whoa! Sorry, let me just cut that short for a second. Pesty is playing Sylvanas in his tempo
I've seen
mage.
this a couple of times, especially when you're dealing into matchups like Hunter, just because you make them have to deal with the board, and if you're playing Mirror Entity as well, you can just slow it up enough for your Sylvanas to come down, but it is very odd.
It is unusual, but the Barnes makes sense now, a lot more sense, as that's not a core inclusion in Tempo Mage all the time, but no surprise to see it there with the Sylvanas. And now, reading into it a little bit more, I perhaps even expect to see the Antonidas that you were talking about, because Sylvanas is another card that can bring you towards the late game, where Antonidas is effective.
This is just lethal though. Kill command on the Mirror Entity means that Savannah Hymen will drop straight in, and ball controls Hunter is 2-0 on the night. He will go up against Warrior next. Hunter into Warrior. It's a tough matchup for the Warrior a lot of the time.
It really is. I mean, when back in the day, before Call of the Wild got nerfed, and most Hunter builds were the pure, big, beefy mid-range list, double high main, double Call of the Wild. Hunter versus Control Warrior strategies was almost approaching Control Warrior versus Freeze Mage from the other way around in terms of win rates. Warrior has a little bit more game now that the Hunter decks have got a little bit faster, but still, huge matchup for the Hunter and a great position for ball control to be in now, having picked up an unfavored win against the Tempo.
And we are seeing two sort of main Warrior decks come out as well. You've got Cthulhu Warrior and you've got the sort of more control-y Warrior with at least Starseeker in there. What do you think we're going to see here? What would be, if you had to choose one to go up against this Hunter deck, would you choose Cthulhu or would you choose Control?
I think the pure Control Warrior up against Hunter is the weakest one. The one with no minion presence, all removal, at least sometimes a Yogg. That's the deck that's going to lose almost all the time. If you want to try and have a shot against the Hunter, you want to have Cthulhu or N'Zoth in your deck, just so you have minion presence, some way to fight in the mid-game. So we'll see what this is from Pesty.
Well, I did actually see Pesty, Mulligan, and Elise, so it looks like it's the Control Warrior. It also has Gromash in hand. It's a strong start here if you want to take that cat trip. That's actually an interesting one, because Secret Keeper was there as well, and he had a couple of he had a single secret in hand, so could have started, you know, getting a bit more face damage in.
Yeah, I think he also has the Cloaked Huntress in hand, so that gives him like a huge power turn right now, and it's two great secrets to have, the Snipe and the Cat Trick. Cat Trick is just value, like it's gonna happen, especially in a control matchup where they're trying to stop what you are trying to do with their removal spells, and then Snipe, you're going into your opponent's Acolyte turn, their Ravaging Ghoul turn, like all this kind of stuff. Here you go, straight from Pesty, just plays out into the Snipe, the Ravaging Ghoul goes down.
Is that a deliberate play to put the Ravaging Ghoul down? Because you could have put Acolyte down. It still wouldn't have traded well into the Cloaked Huntress, but do you deliberately put Ravaging Ghoul down and say, I think this is a Snipe, I'll proc it on my Ravaging Ghoul, and then I'll save my Acolyte to try and get some more card draw later?
So I think the thinking is, if it went off and didn't get sniped, it can test the board naturally, 3-3 against 3-3. He also then has Bash in his hand, so by putting into 3, he has this follow-up with the Bash. So I think it was more about that kind of stuff than wanting to preserve the Acolyte value against Snipe, but the second Snipe coming down, and now the Cat Trick, means this is just so much damage. Ball Control actually chooses to hold back here and play around Brawl by holding back one of his best resources, the Houndmaster, in his hand, because if Pesty is forced to Brawl now on this turn, he just can Houndmaster the remaining beast, because any minion that lives at this point will be a beast.
Well, yeah, it's a wise decision to play around Brawl. There comes the Acolyte as well. That will get sniped though, but it is damage, so he does get to draw a single card off it, so not the end of the world. Does have double execute in hand and another Acolyte as well, but Houndmaster, Kill Command, Unleash the Hounds. This is looking pretty darn beefy for Ball Control. Yeah,
and I like the way that Ball Control has done this now, because he's put himself in a position where this turn he's all in, But if this turn a Brawl comes down, he has the Grandmother in play. So he's much better insured against Brawl than he would have been by going all in on the previous turn with the fully aggressive Houndmaster play. So I like just a little twist that he's had on navigating this situation. Pesty right now is probably just looking at that revenge in hand and just saying that, you know, I have to hope for ball control to make a mistake at this point.
Yeah, but is there really a mistake he can make? Assuming with 2 armor, that's 18. You've got 9, 10, 11, plus kill command makes it 16, and hero power is lethal. So
it is.
Having that kill command in hand just means that this is lethal damage coming out. And it's going to be ball control just sweeping with his Hunter. Brought it out second and has gone 3-0 with it into the Druid Mage and Warrior matchups.
Yeah, and I think having lost the opening Druid Mirror put Pesty in a very, very comfortable position because Druid is such a huge sweep potential deck that winning the Mirror match with it then puts you in the driver's seat to be able to sweep. So ball control to then come back from that, set up his Hunter to sweep instead. He'll be very pleased with that because, as we said, this is a guy right now with, you know, the expectations of the UK scene on his shoulder. Yeah. He'll be looking to get himself in a dominant position for potentially global games next year as well that Blizzard are putting on to get voted into the UK team, and we all want to see him there because we know he's potentially the strongest player in the country.
And it's showing it, you know, coming back from earlier weeks where he didn't have the best of weeks, was 1-3 down at one point, now equalized his scoreline at 3-3, and is playing up against Ben in the next game. Ben is 1-2. Ball control 3-3. Ben hasn't really played as many games because of some scheduling issues, but it's going to be a very interesting matchup because Ben is bringing Warlock instead of the Warrior, so he's going perhaps towards more aggressive decks across the board.
Yeah, and it's something that I said in our kind of fake intro to the teasing the day starting when it didn't actually start, is that some people are getting a little bit scared of bringing Warrior to tournaments because of the most common decks, Warrior feels like the easiest one to try and hard counter. You know, with decks like that mid-range Hunter that we just saw do so much work from ball control. So it doesn't surprise me to see one or two people getting off that Warrior in their lineups in this tournament, but we'll see if it works out for Ben.
Oh, speaking of getting off the Warrior as well, ball control switched over to Warlock for the next round as well, so he won't be playing Warrior.
Interesting, okay.
Obviously, because he's playing a different opponent, he's allowed to change all of his decks and can do whatever he wants with them. We'll be back in a couple of minutes, guys, just to see who wins out between ball control and Ben. My name's Stoner, this is Sottle, and we'll be right back with the next game of this night.
Hey guys, I have got some exciting news. So, Game have asked me to make a load of ads for them. Obviously, the best part is that they're giving me a load of money and sending me free game stuff. Doesn't really have anything to do with games, but thanks anyway. All I have to do in return is make a load of videos holding their stuff up to camera and saying the prices. That's it. I don't even have to leave the house. I don't even really have to wear trousers. I mean, I am wearing trousers. I don't have to. So in this video, I thought I would practice some advert skills. Whoa! No way! Off. Deals! Game. Deals. Wow! Deals. Wow. Game. The main sponsor. The only sponsor. $29.99, $49.99, $35.99, $16. So that's that. I can get back to making more game videos now, but watch out for more game videos that are also adverts about games. Thanks for the money, Game.
in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, won't you let the light shine through? In the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for you,
magnifies the amount of pain.
Oh, that's true. Hello guys and welcome back to the UK Masters Hearthstone. I'm Sona, I'm joined by Sottle, and we are about to get into our second game of the night. Third game if you count the forfeit earlier on. Cypher forfeiting to Pesty, not Betsy, Pesty. But it's Ball Control versus Ben to kick us off here.
It is, believe it or not, the guy's name is Ben, despite what it
might not
looks
look like Ben. X13EN is
yeah,
Ben.
he either gets called Ben or Excellence is the other thing that gets pushed towards. But the original intention was Ben, so
I'll
that's
see
what
how
we're
he
going to call
plays
him.
before I call him Excellence.
And honestly, I swell with pride to see Ben in this tournament because Ben, and to a lesser extent Epiphany, they are players that kind of came up in a community that formed around my stream and a few other streams in the UK community. And when I first got to know Ben, it was just a name in Twitch chat. And then I bumped into him in some UK events. And now here he is in the UK Masters, duking it out with some of the best that the UK has to offer.
Next up, BlizzCon.
Why not? Yeah. You're going to follow the subtle path to success.
Success is a word perhaps I wouldn't use. But anyway,
Wow.
Hunter versus
Wow.
Hunter versus Druid is our first matchup, but Ben will be piloting that Hunter, and Ball Control has the Druid in. It looks like it's going to be a Malagos Druid for him once again.
Yep, does hit the growth in his opening hand, so it's hard to complain too much about a hand that is wild growth into Fandral, but of course the Malagos in the opening hand, not what he's going to be looking for, but if that Fandral is unanswerable, if Ben doesn't get off to a fast start here with the Hunter to be able to take care of Fandral coming down on turn 3, he does have that immediate Nourish follow-up.
It did actually look like Ball Control kept the Malagos there.
That was after Mulligan already.
Oh, was that after
Yeah,
Mulligan? Oh, that makes more sense,
Greetings,
doesn't it?
traveler.
Didn't see the original Mulligan. But yeah, Malagos, as you say, not the best. A big Mulligan here from Ben as well. Not very much to play in the early game. I mean, you've got Quick Shot and you've got the Eaglehorn Bow there as well, but really you wanted something that you could play turn 1, turn 2 here.
Yeah, and honestly, this could spell trouble for Ben because, as I said, that curve brings down a Fandral very early and then has the Nourish follow-up if it's not dealt with. And right now, Ben's not looking like he's going to have too much game against an early Fandral Staghelm because he hasn't got those quick 1-drops and 2-drops to come down and start contesting.
So what's Ball Control thinking about here? Is he just like taking some time to compose himself, or is he thinking, do I coin Wild Growth?
I mean, I don't think he's giving too much legitimate consideration to a coin Wild Growth in this situation because it doesn't really do anything for him. He doesn't have a 3-drop, he doesn't have Innovate 5-drop available, so he also, like, potentially sometimes you coin Wild Growth because you expect a Hero Power or Wrath on the following turn. But I'm a big advocate of doing this turn 1 with Druid every single game regardless, because Druid is the one deck in the game on turn 1 that from your opponent's perspective, you could be able to do anything.
Yeah.
So it's at least worth selling that idea to your opponent every single time that you have a bunch of options in your opening hand in terms of mana ramp and innovates.
It's all about the mind games.
Yeah, why not?
Of course, could have a Raven Idol or something there. Now, big draw actually for Ben. He got the Snipe, which will reduce that Fandral when it comes down, makes it a little bit more difficult. Wild Growth or Raven Idol? Probably still the Wild Growth. You just want to ramp up towards that Fandral?
Yeah, I would expect to see that, but also, you know, a Secret of the Hunter would just generally jam on turn 2 is Catrick, so Ball Control will be thinking about the implications of that. It's so huge against Druid in particular to just punish that turn 2 Wild Growth. Punish probably not quite the right word, but at least, you know, start
get something.
Yeah, at least start a bit of a beatdown as they start to gain the mana on you. So Ball Control does now get the news that it's not the Catrix, and now he's considering all the various other implications, whether potentially he does want to coin out the Raven Idol now, but that doesn't seem to make much sense while you're chilling on a Fandral already.
And just Fandral next turn and then coin out
Yep.
the Raven Idol there. Now, Ben looks to be playing this sort of later game Hunter with that Barnes in hand. Whether he's running Sylvanas or not is something we'll have to wait and see, but probably got the Rag, maybe even running a 1 of Call of the Wild just for the late game. How do you feel that runs into Ball Control here? Because Ball Control really has had an optimal early game for a Druid.
Yeah, and importantly, Ben has just whiffed a bit on the early game as well. So now, you know, Ball Control, if he can stabilize a mid game now, start to get a grip on the board, you know, before turn 6, that's the kind of position that Druid needs to be able to deal with a high main. They need to be able to leverage a board of their own. There are high mains in this deck from Ben, but the longer this goes on without the Hunter really getting through any kind of significant pressure, then the more it will end up favoring Ball Control as the Druid.
So that was actually a Fandral straight into pass the turn. He decided he didn't want to go coin Raven Idol, even with the Snipe coming down. Now, if that were me, I probably would have coined out the Raven Idol just to get something out of my Fandral.
Sure. It's a question of how much difference does the minion make against Hunter. We talked about this in the previous game with Mage, where faceless summoners and water elementals and things like that, they don't really do much of a job against Hunter. So just a random minion is probably going to be fairly irrelevant most of the time. So I guess he's just holding on to that Raven Idol, and more importantly, holding on to his coin. And now you see the reasoning for it, because now next turn he has the coin Malagos play available to him and 2 Moonfires to leverage with it for free.
He does, of course, Quickshot and Kill Command are sitting in Ben's hand if he wants to try and take out that Malagos. It's not really what you want to be doing, though. As a hunter, you want to be using those spells more aggressively, trying to get them onto face, trying to melt your opponent down. Is, as you say, a very tricky situation for Ben, because he didn't get that early game state. He wasn't able to get control of the board, and now he's kind of fighting his way back into it, even though it looks like he's got a stronger board state at the moment.
Yeah, but this is going to be a potential huge swing for ball control. And again, this is great foresight, planning 2 or 3 turns ahead in this situation, holding off on the coin Raven Idol that you said was potentially just a huge pull for him. And now ball control needs to make the decision as to whether he's going to commit to the play, because he doesn't get the perfect answer. He would have loved to have potentially used both of the Moonfires just to take out 2 chunky mid-range things, sweep the board. The Infested Wolf is just a little bit awkward. And he does, of course, have to consider the implications of whether there is a deadly shot in Ben's deck, and more importantly, in his hand right now.
Lots of people do run that one of deadly shots for decks like this. You know, if you're playing into a Rag, if you're playing into a Malagos, just being able to take out that lone minion can swing the game in your favor. He does have the option of, playing the Maya Keeper, just trying to get a bit of board state, maybe playing the Raven Idol, looking for a spell as well. It's a little bit of a tricky decision, and you can see that ball control's having to think about it a bit more. If you're Ben, what's going through your mind at the moment? You're saying this is probably the play he's looking at, because you know he's going to have these Moonfires and cracking out. But we now know that Ben knows what's going through his mind. What do you think Ben thinks right now? Does he think this game is lost, or can he get back in?
I mean, first things first, he's going to be praying for that deadly shot to come out if he plays one in the deck. And now with the tracking draw, this is very much colored by whether there's a deadly shot in the deck. And seeing the tracking get cast here, I'm almost certain there is a copy of it being played, but not a copy that is offered to him in the Discover. Freezing Trap, Animal Companion, Kindly Grandmother was the selection. So he does pick up the Freezing Trap here, has the option. No, he doesn't. He's still, 1 damage off with the Kill Command Quick Shot combination to clear out the Mali. So no option but the Freezing Trap in this situation. But this is the scenario that ball control has set up now with the Raven Idol still in hand. Now that he knows his Malagos has lived, this is something I spoke about earlier. More information. Now he can cast that Raven Idol and know full well that he is looking for a spell damage effect.
Definitely looking for as much damage really as he can get out of this. It's Feral Rage and Mulch Innovate. No spell damage there for him, not what he wanted at all. Something like a swipe would have been absolutely tantalizing for him if it had come down. And also at the stage where he can't use that Wild Growth to try and cycle through cards. He's just going to clear the board with the Moonfire. Does need to be a little bit cautious around this because if he attacks in, of course, the Freezing Trap puts that Mali to 11, which means he'd have to use the Innovate to try and get it out.
Nope, can't be done. You can't innovate to more than 10 mana.
So should never attack with that Malagos.
Yep.
Now that he knows it's not a catch-up. That's an interesting interaction.
Yeah, that Freezing Trap against a 9 mana or more minion is actually just assassinate. Like it's just dead. It can't be played again unless you Emperor discount it.
As well.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to look at it. They have the emotional torment of having to look at this 11. It's like, oh, if I could play this Malagos, I would win the game. But no, it's stuck in my hand. Secret Keeper of the draw here. No secrets in hand for Ben. He is still looking at a pretty big board state, and both Moonfires have been used by ball control, which means his burst potential isn't quite as strong as it was, but he's still got swipe, he's still got living roots, he's still got a lot of spell power, spell damage that can come out through this Druid deck.
Yeah, still has a second Raven Idol, I believe, as well, that can pick up some nonsense, so Ben does have to be fearful of that Malagos, but he has no way of dealing with it. He basically has 2 options here. One is to try and control the board and continue isolating the Malagos against the Freezing Trap, and the other is just to say that, hey, I've got a Kill Command, a Quick Shot, an Eaglehorn Bow with a Secret in play. I can just go damage here, and against a 1-card Druid, I win this race more often than I don't.
Of course, it is a 2-card Druid next turn.
Sure, yeah.
You don't know that if you are Ben, so you can't quite be sure. Looks like Kill Command it's just going to clear out the board. So expecting that Malagos, just saying, look, I'm going to keep the freezing trap as an option here. Does use up the Eagle Horn bow, though, decides he doesn't want to use the quick shot. That's not what you want to see if you're ball control. Will cycle with the Wild Growth and try and find himself some answers. Really looking for something like a swipe here. And Living Roots does a similar job.
Yeah, this is one of the benefits, at least, of having Malagos on the board, is that even though you've drawn a 1-mana card on 10 mana there, essentially, the spell damage buff from the Malagos turns it into a reasonable use of your 10-mana turn. So just having this Malagos stick around is actually being hugely important here for ball control, even though it can't be used as an attacking threat itself. But the Innovate, of course, is a massive whiff. The only way we're going to see that come into play is potentially some kind of Arcane Giant play that it opens up, or if he draws Nourish, then suddenly the Innovate can become useful.
Yeah, it can definitely do a little bit of work then. He's used one Nourish earlier in this game, so he's probably still got one sitting somewhere in that deck, and just trying to decide exactly what he wants to do here, because the options are, you go face with it, or you try and clear out that barn, and then clear out one of those pesky as well with the Shapeshift Hero power.
Yeah, and this dance is just going to continue for a while here, which is the Malagos sat on the board just having way too much health for Ben to want to consider dealing with. But, not being an attacking threat in itself, but you're really activating any draws that ball control picks up. The bow is a nice draw for Ben because this allows him now to go for the face plan with the freezing trap in play. But the second freezing trap is an absolute whiff for him. Small saving grace is he at least got to cycle that quick shot before drawing the freezing trap. Otherwise, it would have been an impossibility. And there is a swipe. That is massive.
Straight to face is where you expect this to be going. 9 damage is unthinkably bad at points, and you're going to clear out most of the board as well. You can swipe into hero power and you take out one of those spiders as well, means that he's only got 1 damage on board with a freezing trap stuck in his hand. What do you draw here if you're Ben? You've probably got another Savannah, you've got a Rag somewhere in your deck as well, maybe a Call of the Wild, although some people aren't running that one-of anymore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely beef left in the deck. We haven't seen high main, so I'm confident based on the list that we've seen. Infested Wolves in here, for example, are a little bit of a nod towards not the face list, although we saw Amnesiac playing Infested Wolf in the Face Hunter at BlizzCon, and he says that it's core to the deck and very important. But generally, that's a nod towards the mid-range list, so I would expect to see some high mains and Ragnaros in the deck. And that might be what ball control's considering here, because let's not overreact. There's only 2 damage in play in this situation. He doesn't have to swipe to clear this board. He can just chill for a turn and then potentially just say, hey, your next minion's going to come down, potentially be a much bigger threat, and then that gets cleared up by the swipe. But now, let's think about what kind of read you can get from this as Ben. What cards do you draw that wouldn't be played in more controlled position? Was there any opportunity for Ben to perhaps say, okay, I think he's waiting for a greedier swipe in this situation?
It's possible. I think the problem is at the moment, because there's the freezing trap on the board, you know that if he has a minion, he's probably going to put it down so that you can get rid of that.
Yep.
You know that if he's drawing a Nourish, he's going to be playing that. In all honesty, I think you swipe and then Maya keep it here, get that second minion down and allow him to get into that board. It clears out the board once again. And Ball Control is sitting at 11. He's well within range of a couple of strong spells here, and with the freezing trap being procced next turn, he does have the opportunity to clear out his hand and get the shot and try and cycle through those spells.
So Deadly Shot now is the pickup.
Deary me.
That's the card that he dug for straight away with the tracking on the very turn that Malagos was dropped, but now 3 or 4 turns later finally comes into the hand, and it's just not what he was looking for. Would have taken high main, would have taken Rag, would have taken more direct damage, but the Deadly Shot is way past its point of efficacy here. Even if it takes care of the Malagos, he still needs tools to be able to finish out this game before the Druid can get there.
The question is, do you 50-50 it? So do you Eagle Horn Bow onto the Maya Keeper and then 50-50 between the Ooze and the Malagos with the Deadly Shot? It looks like he's just going to 1 in 3 this. Oh! 1 in 3. Ben says, thank you very much, Pavel taught me how to play like that. And he takes down the Malagos.
Wow, I mean, that is huge. I actually agree with the decision he took, because having this extra bow damage increases your clock significantly, right? With just the hero power, you're only pushing 1 a turn against Druid because they can armor up by 1. So it's going to take you 8 turns from this point to get the job done, at which point you're giving Druid, on average, stronger draws than you to get back into the game. So just making sure that this bow can go face at some point speeds up his clock by at least 3 turns and means that Druid has less time to climb back into it. So I like the risk that he took. Obviously, absolutely nuts to hit the Mali. The important thing is, I think, probably the correct decision.
Definitely makes sense. Understanding that you're playing the odds either way and saying, well, how do I win this game even if I play the odds?
Yep.
He went for that winning strategy, and now ball control needs to work out what he's going to do. He's only got swipe in hand. Swipe to face seems like the only real thing he can do. We'll try and put that freezing track first. Does it with a Maya Keeper so that he has that second minion he can prop onto the board. But it's a very tough situation for him now. Taking into, as you say, it's 5 damage to turn.
Yep, 5 damage a turn, and Ben choosing to hold onto that bow long term does mean that he's extended the life of it here, got the extra charge out of it. We saw him equip it and not even attack on the first swing, just trying to make sure that he had full flexibility with how he was attacking with the bow. And now you're seeing the reasoning for that because he does have these extra charges to swing through. Cloaked Huntress, Freezing Trap number 2 comes down, and speaking of hand reads, Ball Control has been staring at that one card in Ben's hand for the entire time. So he would have pegged it on lethal damage, potentially, as one, you know, a card that he was saving to kill him, or the second Freezing Trap. So now that it's just been played, he knows there's no other trap that would have just been sat in the hand the whole time. So he knows exactly that this is freezing.
Yeah, Ball Control draws the Emperor Thorison as well, and it's... The reason we're saying A is Soto corrected my pronunciation of it last time, so got it right this guy. But it's another freezing trap in hand. He probably knows, well, as you say, if he's had a good read on that, he knows what it is. Goes in with one of the oozes first, can clear out that Secret Keeper, but it's just facing lethal coming on the back swing, and there is the concede. Druid loses to Hunter. Ben going 1-0 in the series, and it's only Warlock and Hunter left here for Ball Control, but we've seen earlier today how strong this Hunter can be.
Yeah, I mean, it set up the Hunter to sweep through the Druid and Pesty's other decks earlier on, so can definitely get some work done for him in this situation. But Ben, again, we talked about this before, but both players bringing Warlock here, which is unconventional, especially because Ball Control played our previous game, of course, was allowed to change his lineups in between, and actually decided that he specifically wanted Warlock to be up against Ben in particular. And Ben is not a player that I would expect too many people to have any outright soul reads on in terms of, you know, this guy likes to play this deck, this guy is known as an aggro player, a control player. It's one of the big unknown quantities in this tournament, so can only imagine that Ball Control is specifically countering something he's seen in previous weeks, some sort of pattern that he's seen develop from Ben.
It definitely feels like a read coming out from Ball Control, saying maybe he plays a little bit more aggro, so I want to play this aggro into him, or maybe he plays really late control. So I want to play these, you know, really early aggressive decks. There are, like, the most common Warlock deck we see is the Disco Lock at the moment. How am I not allowed to say Disco Lock?
That is just me personally hating Disco Lock. It triggers me so hard.
What, the actual phrase?
Yeah, no, just the phrase Disco Lock. Just toss your pen away in anger.
You did the same earlier on.
I
But
did.
why does Disco Lock trigger you, man?
Because I don't understand, like, what's wrong with Discard Lock? Like, it's just as many
Because you
syllables.
shorten everything.
But that's not shorter.
Yeah, disco is shorter than discard because
it's
of the long consonant sound, assonant sound in the A. The vowel has the R, the AR, has a longer sound than an O.
But what if you just say disco?
Then you're saying it wrong, aren't you?
I mean, there's certain people in this country that say shaman, so like, we can't really be talking about people saying things.
Okay. Looks like we are going to get into the game. Ball Control playing what's probably a Disco Lock build here. And Ben, of course, still sitting on his Hunter. Let's get right on into the action.
Yeah, so it looks like Secret Keeper in hand for Ben at this point, but Ball Control is playing the Discard Warlock. I mean, really, what we like.
And now you've added war in there as well. That's a whole nother syllable.
But really, what we should just be calling it is Zoo. Because this is just how you play Zoo now, right? Like, you don't see conventional Zoo anymore, so like, this is just the most powerful list. Like, it has the incredible high roll potential that Zoo never really used to have, right? Zoo, as much hate as it got in the past, it was actually a very honest deck. It did what it did, and it did it consistently. But now, they've added in this Soulfire Silverware Golem, absolute discard nonsense that can blow you out in situations like this. And Ball Control has the combination in his opening hand, alongside just a pile of 1-drops that means he can empty his hand into this Soulfire, potentially even guaranteeing the Silverware Golem.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. You know, Flame Imp is what he's been hovering over here for the first turn. You could put the Void Walker down and just create a taunt in front of that Secret Keeper, but I think you assume there's a secret in hand here for Ben, so you say, I'm going to play the Flame Imp, I'm going to put down the Void Walker as well with the coin, create a little bit of defense, and be able to take out that Secret Keeper next turn.
Yeah, I think this kind of situation that you just saw is something that it's evidence of players being influenced by that huge outcome potential with the Silverware Golem, because if there was no Silverware Golem in hand right now, I'm almost certain we would have just seen 1-drop Coin Soulfire deal with the Secret Keeper, and then you would have discarded another 1-drop, you'd have had a couple more in your hand to follow it up. But Ball Control's greedy little eyes are lighting up in terms of that combination. He's going to hold on to it here, potentially opening up the door to the Secret Keeper to get some work done.
So, and Abusive Sergeant in hand as well. Just get rid of everything. I can see you like grimacing at the thought that this is going to work out for him. But yeah, get everything out. I think you have to attack with Void Walker first just to see what that trap is. I guess the worry is, although we don't see it commonly, Bear Trap could be the trap. And if you attack with Void Walker, then you have this block line for your Flame Imp as well.
Well, also, I think he might just be considering Soulfiring this turn.
Oh.
And from this perspective, he has a 50-50. If he attacks with a minion first, it can be Freezing Trap, which then lowers his chances to a 33%. So Ball Control is considering the freezing implications of whether he wants to Soulfire this turn. He's also thinking about Cat Trick if he wants to Soulfire this turn. Like, this is the pressure that Secret Hunter puts on you, and it's a reason why it's potentially a very effective deck, is because it gives your opponent the opportunity to misplay in a lot of situations like this, because the secret scenarios are so confusing and so intricate.
But Flame Imp will get bounced back to the hand, and we will see that Soulfire stuck there. Flame Imp does come down next turn, but that's 6 damage he's done to his own base via just that Flame Imp, and it's the risk you play with having these Flame Imps. You know, you're always going to be able to take yourself down a little bit. He has got board control over the rest of it, and Kindly Grandmother coming down doesn't really matter too much. Now, the question is, Darkshire Librarian to hope to discard the Silverware. It's a 1 in 3. It looks like that's going to be the play.
The Soulfire goes!
Oh, that's the worst.
The discard discards the discard, and Ben, who got a little bit of the rub of the green with the Malagos Deadly Shot earlier in proceedings, gets the rub again with the discard effects discarding each other, and that Silverware Golem is now sat in hand, and what looked like an incredibly explosive hand now, in terms of a Zoo hand, is actually extremely clunky. Just a 3-mana 3/3 and a 3-mana 3/2 in his hand as Zoo. Those are not the cards he wants to be looking at.
He's got a very slow board as well. He's doing one damage minions all over the shop here. He's going to take out the Kindly Grandmother and will be stuck with 4 damage on board. But Ben will be very happy with this. He's got that Savannah sitting back. Got Quick Shot as well to deal with any imminent threats. And the Infested Wolf right on time. So we'll be able to garner some board control here.
Yeah, Quick Shot can potentially reduce some of the damage on the 3/2 if he wanted to go that way. And with High Main in hand, he's definitely incentivized to kind of stretch the game out. But he has so much health, all of his health in fact left remaining, that the Infested Wolf is just a better board control tool than the Quick Shot at this point, even though it's a turn slower.
And you know that one of those 3 cards is an expensive Flame Imp as well, so you're not too worried about it. Maybe even getting the read off the Darkshire Librarian that there is that Silverware Golem in hand, because it's like, why would you play that when you have 3 cards left in your hand? Well, you're looking for the discard. So at the moment, Ben definitely has a read on this game. Whether he knows exactly what ball control is sitting on, I doubt, but he knows that he can play a little bit slower and not have to worry too much about ball control just melting through him.
Yeah, I think from Ben's perspective, if you are paying attention to that kind of thing, that card's been there since turn 1.
Yeah.
So you are either on Silverware Golem or you're on Doomguard.
Yeah.
But if it was Doomguard, your opponent probably would not have played Darkshire Librarian. Saw the Soulfire go down as well. So if you're Ben and are really paying attention, I think you can potentially put your opponent on that Silverware Golem on the far left. And as you mentioned, you're fully aware of what the Flame Imp is. So Ben can put together a pretty good representation of his opponent's hand here.
And ball control sitting on double Silverware Golem now as well. Used the hero power to draw there. 1 turn away from Savannah for Ben. Has got a lot of spells in hand. You know, you probably want to look at that snipe. Deadly Shot really doesn't get you a huge amount in this situation. I think you probably just trade into the Dire Wolf. And what do you think?
I actually like the Deadly Shot, I think.
Yeah?
I think you could, because you can get a board clear here and just have a minion still in play, which is always what you're looking for against Zoo. This is a situation you want to be in. Anytime you can get 1 minion in play versus 0 minions in play or better, you should take it. And that's exactly what Ben is doing in this situation, because now Zoo is not a deck that plays from off the board, and you're forcing them to play into your board, and now you can choose to sit back and react. But this is one of the ways they can explode back onto the board now.
So
with
Dark Peddler first, have the Soulfire back. You don't really care if you discard the Flame Imp because it's too expensive anyway. Second Flame Imp is probably the draw here, in all honesty. You could take the Gadgetzan Jouster, but meh. In all honesty, it's not the best card in the world. It's a 2-3 for 1 at best, and you know you're playing Zoo, so you probably don't have that many expensive minions in your deck. We'll take the Flame Imp, and there is the Soulfire coming out as well.
I was about to give you the sarcastic, nice analysis. You followed it up with some actual nice analysis.
Thanks, man.
Redeemed.
There's the Silverware Golem as well coming out, so does get some board control back here, but so the question is here. You talk about trying to garner board control. Savannah is the best way to do it. There's no question because he's played it now. But I was going to ask you, do you want to play the Snipe Freezing Trap and try and make the enemy make mistakes? Or do you just Savannah and say, look, you can trade into me, I'll still have 2/2s left at the end of the day?
Yeah, there's some fear equity in just jamming a couple of traps for sure, because you make your opponent think, first and foremost, is there an explosive in play? That's like the one big thing that they'll have to deal with. But, in a vacuum, the high main is just so much more powerful than any other play that you had available that I definitely don't fault the snap play in this situation.
The third
draws his
flame imp of the
19th
game.
flame imp of the game.
So gonna life tap here. I think, in all honesty, you flame imp into Darkshire Librarian because, as we say, you don't care about discarding a 3-mana flame imp, and that isn't going to be the discard. So Silverware Golems, 2 of them have come out, and it's a very threatening board state with no way of clearing it for Ben.
Kill command pick up. Would have been looking for a Houndmaster specifically. That might have given him the ability to push that he needed if he then drew into this kill command on the next turn. There is, 6, 12, 14 damage staring him down on the board, but I think Ben's only win condition in this situation is to go face.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I think you probably chuck down both your traps as well, just to put that fear equity you were talking about out. If you had an explosive trap, it would have been the perfect time to play it, but of course it doesn't have one, and it will be Savannah to face. Now, that's 9 damage he's away, keeping that kill command back, obviously because he's played both the traps. Into a Defender of Argus, this makes it a lot more tricky for him to actually be able to do anything, and it looks like that will be what Ball Control decides to do. Goes in, pops the Freezing Trap with the Dark Peddler, bounces that back to his hand. Now has the Defender of Argus as well that he can put down. Not quite lethal, but definitely looking that way in the next couple of turns.
Yeah, he does have the potential option to Dark Peddler here, but even then he's trying to fish for 7 damage from the Peddler card, which just doesn't exist. So the Argus has to be the secure play here. It's just Ball Control is trying to consider what he'll do with his attacks, whether he's playing around Explosive, whether he's playing around Snakes, all these kinds of implications.
Well, he knows it's not explosive because he went in with a Dark Peddler, so that would have props.
But, he'll get the good news anyway after dropping the Argus that the Snipe will go off and clear up his decisions for him. So I'm sure the Argus is getting played, and that will be the line that we end up with here for Ball Control. But Ben is just a second kill command or quick shot away from ending this game.
It's very, very close, as you say. Even with the Defender of Argus coming down and putting that taunt line up on the Silverware Golems, exactly where you expect it to go. You want to get the maximum you can out of it, so having 4 health creatures is always important. All it takes is a second kill command or a quick shot, and it's up to this top deck. And it's going to be a Houndmaster coming out. That's not what he wanted to see, but does delay us by a tiny margin.
It is good enough. I think he'll have to use the kill command
on one of the Silverware
defensively
Golems,
as well, but it's good enough. It gives him some inevitability here, because with this massive high main in play, if Ball Control doesn't have lethal on the following turn, not only does he have to punch through these 2 huge minions, he has to deal with the 2/2s that are left in play as well, or risk be facing down lethal himself.
The thing is, you're giving Ball Control 3 opportunities to draw this card, because you've got Darkshire Librarian, you've got Defender of... you have the Dark Peddler, and you had a Hero Power if you wanted to use it. So what I'd probably do, is attack with that, you get a card out of it. Voidwalker, not the best, but it does allow you to put that taunt up. Now you probably Dark Peddler to look for that answer. And even if you don't get it from that, you can put up a taunt line with the Defender of Argus.
Yeah, I think I agree with the leading out with the Peddler here now that you've whiffed from the Librarian, but At that point, if you whiff off the Peddler, it does become a decision between Life Tap and Defender of Argus. I think Defender of Argus ends up being a little bit safer. You'd have, what, 2-3 health taunts, which would tank most of this board state. There's no one draw that would kill you in that situation. It would have to be quick shot into something. So.
You could Dark Peddler into Hero Power into Void Walker, which would still give you a 1-3 health, and that would keep you alive, assuming that the opponent didn't draw an Eagle Horn Bow, quick shot, or a kill command.
But then suddenly there are one-card combinations that can kill you. So I think since this is now whiffed, we will see the Argus play, but honestly, that's already just a little bit unlucky from Ball Control in this situation with so many outs there not to hit them off so many potential draws.
Let's see what Ben has picked up. It's going to be the Barnes, so going for the YOLO rag. Haven't seen it come out yet. If this is a rag and it hits face, I will just cry in a corner. The amount of times I've seen Barnes hit rag while I've been doing the UK Masters. That's it. That is game, and Ball Control has it. No way of Ben getting back into that one. Just cannot clear the board. And the Warlock will take it, evening out the score at 1-1.
Maybe, you know, I confess I haven't had a chance to catch as much of the UK Masters previous weeks as I would have liked to due to various other commitments, but I wonder if that specifically was the read that Ball Control had, because Zoo, very effective matchup against mid-range Hunter. So if Ben has been consistently bringing slightly slower Hunter decks to this tournament, I wouldn't be surprised if that's why we're seeing Ball Control go with the Zoo deck here.
So if you're Ben, what do you switch up to here? You've got Druid and you've got Warlock left in your sort of back pocket, in your quiver.
Well, I mean, let's go out on a limb and assume that the Druid deck is Malagos Druid. Again, the Zoo is an effective deck against Malagos Druid, so that's not a matchup that I would want to queue up. You're never happy when your best option is a mirror match because, you know, you feel like you've been cornered in the lineup stage at that point because you should always have a deck available to you that's better than 50-50. So you already feel like you're on a downward slope at that point, but you do just kind of have to suck it up because I don't really like him queuing Druid into the Zoo here, assuming, again, that it is the Malagos Druid that most people are bringing.
Assuming it's the Disco Lock as well, you know. Could crack out a Renault Lock, I believe is what it's called. Reno Lock, of
Not
course.
like this.
I just do it to troll him. It's amusing, but it's going to be Druid. Picked up here by Ben, and it looks like it's a Beast Druid.
It looks very much like a Beast Druid. You can tell from all the beasts. Enchanted Raven on 1 is huge. Savage Combatant as well. Great tool if he's going to pick up Innovate, but that Enchanted Raven is really going to get the ball rolling potentially against Ball Control. Looking for Mark of Yasharaj or Living Roots to go alongside it. This is actually a effective hand against Zoo, but I was going to go ahead and say, I don't think this matchup is better than 50-50 against Zoo either. So
you think Beast Druid loses to Druid?
I do, yeah. So I'm actually now interested, like you said, as to what is his Warlock deck that was keeping him off queuing this up? Does he feel like he needs to hold his Warlock, potentially Zoo, back to snipe up something from Ball Control later on? So interested as to what Ben's long-term thought process here was with his lineup.
It's a question as to whether Ben thinks it's 50-50 as well, because as much as like, if maybe you've seen the Beast Druid and he pilots it slightly differently or says, well, I understand the matchup slightly better, so I think I win 60% of the time or even 55% of the time. It is a relatively strong early hand from him with the Living Roots there as well if he wants to take out that Flame Imp. But he's offering up the trade. He's saying, look, you've taken 3 damage from that already. You want to trade into my Raven. I'm pretty happy with that. And Warlock, Shifter Xeris has to be. Yes! Yes!
Yeah, I mean,
I love it when people pick Shifter.
I do too, honestly. Like, I think Shifter Xeris is an appalling card that you would never put in a real deck, but it's so nice off Peddler as almost just a mulligan for your Discover, right? It's like none of these options are good. I'll take Xeris. It might just randomly win me the game at some point. Why not? It's better than this other trash.
Sometimes it just morphs into something perfect as well. Like into Doom Guard, and just like, yes, lethal. Lethal with the Shifter Xeris. If that happened to me, though, I would feel incredibly aggrieved. How has this happened? Anyway, we'll be seeing what Ben wants to play here. He's got Power of the World, he's got the Mark of Yesaraj that you were talking about as well, and Fandral sitting there waiting to be played, but needs to get some beasts out before he can do it. Living Roots is probably the play here. You can either take out the Dark Peddler or chuck down a couple of those roots for yourself. Can just Hero Power face as well if you decide that you don't want to be using any of these cards early on.
Yeah, the problem is that Ben is looking at these cards on the left-hand side of his hand and wanting to play them in combinations with each other. This is why we saw the coin get held on the previous turn and not, you know, one-drop coin Living Roots to swing the board, because he wanted to combine Living Roots with Fandral. He wanted to combine Living Roots with Power of the Wild. So here, we now see that potential setup turn coming out from Ben, where he just says, I'm going to put 4 minions on the board. You can only deal with one of these because you're Zoo, and it's kind of what you see is what you get. That 2/2 is going to go into the 1/1, and from this point, Power of the Wild swings the board for me significantly.
I told you Shifter Zeus was the pick, because you discard it straight away, but you get the card draw off it. It means that you keep both of these Soulfires in hand, and it's just perfect. You know, reading it absolutely perfectly. Ball control predicted that. Superb job by him. Now,
what would you have done if that Shifter's Eris had turned into a Silverware Golem that turn?
oh, I would have hugged ball control the next time I saw him. Many hugs. Now, the question, I think, you know, you always talk about tempo and you talk about Warlock and you say you need to try and trade into it. You need to try and get some board control if you can, because Warlock doesn't want to play from behind. What is Ben's best option is to actually garnering some board control here?
Power of the Wild, coin Hero Power is the play that leaps out to me. He can use the Mark of Yasharaj instead, but I think Hero Power does almost as an effective a job and lets him retain that resource in hand. So now he can take out the 2-1 with the Hero Power, double value trade into the 1-3, and just lose one of his 2/2s to take care of the 3/2 Librarian. And I said on the previous game, any time you can create a situation, I mean, this is fine. I was going to use the example of 2 minions against 0 minions. Great situation. Still, 3 against 1 is kind of the same thing, because I said on the previous turn, what you see is what you get from Zoo. Most of the time, the only removal they have available is the amount of minions they have on the board. If they have 1 minion, they can remove 1 minion. It just so happens that Ball Control has a big old pile of Soulfires in his hand that could get some work done, but most of the time, that is an effective strategy.
But again, with the discard block being such part of the meta, people do hold on to those Soulfires for when they have a Silverware Golem, for when they're looking for that discard. So now with Doomguard as well, that's anti-synergy to say the least. It's not what he wants at all. Mark of Yesaraj onto one of the Living Roots, trades it in, and we have that 2-0 situation.
Ball Control throwing out that was a mistake there for a second. I'm wondering if there was some sort of sequencing error or something from Ben that
it was when he drew the Doomguard, so it might have been like, oh, that was a mistake for me.
Yeah, definitely a significant misplay to draw Doomguard on that turn. Yes. I completely agree with
He just didn't shuffle his cards properly beforehand. That's the reason that sometimes I like playing like physical card games a little bit more, because the actual feeling of shuffling cards is amazing.
I like playing physical card games a lot more because it's easier to cheat and load your deck in the right
have long sleeves, you know, just like, slip it in. Anyway, it's going to be Malcazar's Imp into Soulfire. Get an ace out of here or there. And actually, with Doomguard in hand, Malcazar's Imp can do a lot of work. Don't really want to be discarding an Imp Gang Boss, though. It's a pretty powerful card in the discard block.
Yeah, but I think if this Malcazar's Imp sticks to the board, then he is going to not think twice about slamming the Doomguard and discarding the Imp Gang Boss, because the cycle power is just huge. And that Innovate draw might actually get Ben out of a mess here, because if the Innovate was not drawn, we would not have seen Hero Power used this turn. He just wouldn't have been able to get away with it. It wouldn't have developed anything. So the fact that he this time drew the Innovate means that he is able to get himself out of the potential Doomguard mess. Tiger developed on board now that can potentially trade with the Councilman on the next turn. And now, this is a much trickier decision from board control, because as you said, Imp Gang Boss, very high value card on its own.
And the Defender of Argus can do a huge amount of work as well. So probably going to see that Imp Gang Boss coming down. Maybe Hero Power first, just to see what you want to get out of it. Because otherwise, you're wasting 3 mana. You're sort of floating it, saying, oh, I'm not quite sure what I want to do with these crystals. But he is thinking a little bit about this decision, because he wants to try and defend his Darkshow Councilman if he can. But there's no real way of doing that with this board. You know, you've got Defender of Argus, which would taunt the Darkshow Councilman, but it's still just going to get taken out by Stranglethorn Tiger and Hero Power next turn.
Yeah, even if you just played Doomguard here and went face, you're pushing 8 this turn, so you put the Druid at 18, but you're still just offering a straight-up value trade for that Councilman on the board with the Stranglethorn Tiger, and the Druid kind of just has enough health to be able to tank in this situation. So he is going to use the Argus just to get it out of range directly from the Stranglethorn Tiger, force a Hero Power turn again from Ben here. But Ben has the Fandral to drop alongside it this time, doesn't have to lose any tempo as he would have done on the previous turn without the Innovate.
Having the Fandral there really made that much easier play for Ben, because otherwise you start getting into this position where you are wasting a large portion of your mana pool. It's going to be a Knife Juggler draw here. If that hits onto the Stranglethorn Tiger, that's a big swing. And you've got Doomguard as well. Looks like that's going to be the place to try and trade into the Fandral. Knife Juggler doesn't hit, but you've still got Defender of Argus to take out the Stranglethorn Tiger. And just like that, ball control swings it in his favor.
Yeah, but Ben himself does have the Curator. This is one of the more powerful tools in the deck. 4/6. You know, compare this essentially to pre-nerf Ancient of Lore, right? But it has both effects, right? It draws you 2 cards, as it just did in this situation. But Ancient of Lore had the alternate option to heal you for 5. Well, this thing's a 6 health taunt, so it essentially also heals you for 6. Like, kind of a crazy card if you're able to fit it in the right deck with at least beasts and dragons. And hey, I heard Azure Drake was a pretty good dragon in
I
decks.
hear it's pretty strong most of the time. Sometimes you even see people, not specifically in Beast Druid decks, but people will play Finley Murgleton as well to get that Murloc out as well. We'll be able to trade into that. Did get the swing with the Knife Juggler, meaning the Doomsayer traded, but Doomguard, sorry, traded into it. Ben has a lot of cards in hand, not a lot sitting on the board yet. Needs to decide how exactly he wants to play this turn. Azure Drake does get you that extra card draw. You've got the Arnasis as well. I can't remember the start of that.
Darnassus Aspirant.
Darnassus Aspirant, that's the one. I knew it was something along those lines.
Something with Darnassus.
I play Beast Druid as well, you know. Looking at the names is difficult.
Yeah, I think we're going to see Aspirant come down here alongside... No, I was going to say Savage Combatant and the Hero Power as well, but turns out he does go for the Cycle. Just goes for maximum minion presence here. I guess he's trying to dig through his deck, get as many chances as he can to hit Swipe, which would be pretty much game-ending at this point. So this way, by playing Azure Drake #1 this turn, he essentially gets 1 card deeper, because yes, next turn he could just Drake Swipe still. That play would still be available to him. He's drawn 1 extra card already, which means he has increased chances of hitting that Swipe at some point.
Second Knife Juggler and the Imp Gang boss drawn here for ball control. Now, the question is, do you want to trade into the Darnassus just to take him down to 9 mana again? Do you want to look at playing, you know, double Knife Juggler into Imp Gang boss to try and get some of those knives hitting where you want them to? He's already hero powered, of course. Knife onto the Enchanted Raven. That is the only beast sitting there. So you can reduce the potential of the Mark of Yesaraj getting him that extra card. But you can see how much ball control is having to think about this, because playing that Imp Gang boss isn't necessarily the best choice before you've traded it.
Wow, picks up perfect answer. Direwolf fills out the curve perfectly. That means 4 more knives this turn instead of just the 2 if he'd have picked up something that he couldn't play alongside the Imp Gang boss, as well as just being able to push more damage due to the aggression of the card. And now Ben is pretty much on that Swipe draw, just needs it so badly.
Does have the draw card from the Mark of Yesaraj, so has the opportunity for it, but will just draw Taunt Druid's Claw comes out. I think you have to play that as a taunter now. I'm not sure how alive it keeps you. Into Doomguard you lose anyway, but I just think you have to get a taunt minion down, because otherwise you lose into a lot more than just that Doomguard.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to which outs specifically Ben was looking for. Maybe this Druid of the Claw was one of them, but still, if he'd have played the Drake first, he still has this Druid of the Claw available to play with the 10 mana that he has. And you know, more importantly, it feels like Drake Swipe is going to need to happen this game if you are going to win. So by playing the Mark of Yasharaj first, he's taken away the opportunity of Drake Swipe this turn. So he clearly had a different out in mind that he was digging for, and without literally having the 30-card deck list in front of me, I can't tell you what that would have been, but I'm going to go Savage Combatant here. He is playing fast and loose with his life total right now. And to put this in perspective, he's seen both Soulfires and 1 Doomguard be used already. So from his perspective, he might think that he has a decent shot of staying alive now. Most Zoo decks are only playing 1 Abusive Sergeant as well, and he's already seen that be used. So from his stance, he thinks he might be alive here with the Zoo just needing the 4 damage to win. There is a second Abusive, though.
Yeah, and he's got hero power. He's got enough life to try and pop for that. There is got him. Direwolf Alpha. That's exactly what he wants, and that is lethal. Just straight out of the hand. Ben not respecting the lethal possibilities coming out from ball control, and that Warlock will take it away from the Beast Druid. It's 2-1 now to ball control. His Warlock, he likes this, goes 1 game down and then just starts sweeping the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty common strategy in Last Hero Standing. It's one of the core strategies for the format, which is just bring 3 decks that you think have the opportunity to sweep the meta.
Yeah.
Then you essentially have 3 shots to try and sweep 3-0, regardless of what the game score is at the time. But I think, despite me saying that Beast Druid is unfavored in that matchup, and I certainly believe it is, I think Ben definitely had an opportunity to win that game, but he needed to fish harder for the swipe in certain situations. Didn't go for it. I don't think it would have changed too much because the swipe wasn't the next card. We saw what it was, but still, I don't think he gave himself the maximum opportunity to get himself out of that game.
He could have delayed it, as you say, by a little bit more with the Druid of the Claw as well. Put that down as a taunter. That 6 damage that came out wouldn't have come out at all, and you would have just been able to defend yourself a little bit easier. Warlock into Warlock. It's the matchup, the mirror matchup of the ages. And now comes the big question. Can Ben's Warlock match up to the power that Ball Control is bringing out?
Yeah, what's interesting is that we saw a Demon Fire get discarded out of Ben's opening mulligan, which is, it's still a zoo list. It's a zoo list that people started to experiment with. I know Epiphany was trying it out very early on after the Malcazar's Imp was printed, and it's something that Muzzy, one of the top US players, had a lot of success with as well, because with the Malcazar's Imp as a 1-drop, you now have 6 1-drop demons that you can play on turn 1. And then if your curve is Demon into Demon Fire on turn 2, you're going to win a lot of games of Hearthstone. It did melt away a little bit. People favored the more consistent list that Ball Control is playing, or the list that we've seen recently played by some of the Asian American players with Young Priestess. But again, Ben rewinding time, getting that Demon Fire in his deck, and after mulliganing it away, he did pick up the 1-drop Demon, so maybe kicking himself just a little bit.
Yeah. Ben has a lot better curve here than Ball Control. I mean, Ball Control had nothing to play on turn 1. It's pretty set for turn 2 and turn 3, but Ben has that Dark Iron Dwarf. If you like, that's also not an auto-include in a lot of decks. A little bit more sort of high-end for a zoo deck.
Yeah, again, it's kind of a retro card. It's something that was relatively core for a while. They generally played 3 of the 4-mana dudes, like Argus and Dark Iron Dwarf. You kind of mix them up. Now it's kind of been cut out to make room for that Silverware Golem discard package, but I want to rewind, and I want to say I will take Ball Control's hand every time in this game versus Ben. Like, coin Imgang Boss into Imgang Boss in the Zoo Mirror is bananas.
I didn't even see the second Imgang Boss yet. That's pretty darn powerful. But he's going to use the coin early on.
Interesting.
Going for the Dark Shield Librarian, but hopefully... yeah, that's not what he was hoping for. And there's the Demon Fire on turn 2, so perfect draw if you want to try and get the aggression off here. The thing is, this trades pretty well. You've got 3-5 into the 3-2. You trade into anything else that's coming out of the hand of Ball Control as well. And that was a little bit aggressive from Ball Control, really. Looking for the discard into Silverware Golem when it's a 1 in 4 in your hand.
1 in 3, I think, at that point?
No, because
you had
the...
Yeah, so... yeah, I mean, I agree. I was looking at that hand and just thinking coin Imgang every single time. Like, you'll take some damage in the short term because, your opponent will be ignoring you, developing and going face, but your chance to bounce back from there with just 2 Imgang bosses on the board plus any buffs that you draw at this point, not to be results-oriented, but we're looking at Abusive Sergeant Direwolf Alpha in his hand right now, which would have made those Imgang bosses do an incredible amount of work. But, Ball Control, I mentioned much earlier on that this deck does give you that high roll potential now. Sometimes you can just say go and see what happens, and I think that was the stance that Ball Control decided to take.
Here comes the Imgang boss, very strong into Knife Juggler, of course, allows you to get a huge amount of procs off. Malcazar's Imp here does have the Silverware Golem, so any discard could work out well for him, but it's a little bit of a clanky turn if he plays that. Decides just to go for the Dark Iron Dwarf and gets very fortunate with the Knife Juggler as well. So it means he can trade into this Imgang boss and just reduce any possibility of Ball Control getting those Imps out.
And that was huge for him because now it's kind of a 2-card answer required for Ball Control unless there was a Soulfire in hand, because there were 2 1/1s in play, as there would have been if the knife potentially hit the Imgang boss in the first place. Suddenly, Direwolf just cleans up on its own on the Dark Iron Dwarf. Unfortunately for Ben, there is the Direwolf and Abusive combination in hand for Ball Control, but hard to feel sorry for him based on the outcome that he got there.
Now, question is here: if you're Ben, what do? Do you go Malcazar's Imp, Knife Juggler into Malcazar's Imp to set up the Doomguard Silverware Golem next turn? If you do that, you're wasting 2 mana. You could Hero Power first. You could just play the Silverware Golem as a 3-mana 3-3.
You could, and the problem with the life tap play as well is that you don't guarantee discarding the Silverware Golem next turn either, because you then have 3 other cards in your hand by the time you played it. I actually like this play as well. The Doomguard just coming down. You get, again, that potential of the Silverware Golem outcome happening, and you realize that this is a purely board control focused matchup. If he slowed down for one more turn there, the Doomguard wouldn't have been enough. The board would have been gone forever. There was no way that Ben was going to be able to get it back. He realized he had to react right there, needed to take the risk, got rewarded for it as well with the Silverware Golem.
He's sitting on a high HP as well, so he can just hero power to try and get some card draw out. Doesn't need it all to come out from that Malcazar's Imp, and had a 66% chance, as you say, to get that Silverware Golem out. Technically 66.66 recurring or whatever the numbers are. And I knew you'd bring that back to me later on. Just be like, Sona, come on. If you're gonna quote percentages, you've got to get them right.
What kind of pedant do you take me for?
You said that Renault was wrong, and I'm pretty sure it's Renault Jackson. So.
please
have you not met the other guys who've got...
one of us is Sona casting
Sir Persia with Mergleton.
Wow. I am going to go and commit Honourable Subaru in response to that guy.
Hold on. Anyway, or as you Hearthstone guys would know, amazing. So, Doomguard is there, hero power as well. Malcazar's Imp. You've got the Voidwalker coming out and the Possessed Villager. So, lots of 1-drops here for Ben. Not a huge amount of board control for him, though, because you've got that Flame Imp. Double Knife Juggler as well here for board control. So, he can start trying to get those knives bouncing all over the place. Will hero tap first? Might even just decide to go Darkshire Councilman here, but it's a little bit risky with that Doomguard still being on the board.
Yeah, unfortunately, the 3-mana card being in hand, the Silverware Golem, if he had had a third 2-drop there, would have been such a potentially huge turn with Double Juggler into another 2-drop. But Ben has just started to get his grip back now, and this all comes back to that decision, the decision that looked a little bit counterintuitive, to drop the Doomguard early, because remember, he was staring at a Malcazar's Imp Silverware Golem hand, and the potential, or the temptation, sorry, for most newer players, casual players, would have been to get all of those cards to line up together, make the wombo combo happen. Ben understood the state of the game and said, no, I need the board right now, and now you can see that he's starting to get a grip back on this board because of that.
And Doomguard into card draw, that's exactly what we wanted early on. Discards a Councilman, draws a Councilman. This is what happens in politics. You just can't get rid of those darn politicians.
That was just a no-text 5/7 charge minion. That's what just happened. He just got a 5/7 charge
5/7
with no
minion.
downside.
Keep your hand.
Yeah.
Although you do start, fatigue. You never know. One card left.
The Zoo Mirror classically comes all the way down to fatigue, as you'll famously know.
As we all know, turn 7 fatigue is a big harm for a lot of players. Now, I think what you're wondering here, if you are Ben, is how do you trade in the most effectively to clear out this board? He is going to sacrifice that first Doomguard, and then just looks like he's going to go face. The second Doomguard picks a Knife Juggler out, so going face with the Malcazar's Imp makes a lot of sense. You don't really have much else you can do with that to actually advance. Doomguard trading for Knife Juggler, just trying to reduce the ability for those Knife Jugglers to clear the board.
Yeah, I mean, leaving double Juggler up, I mean, even in the Zoo Mirror, leaving one Juggler up is something that you're never too happy about, because Knife Juggler, Soulfire, Doomguard, these are really their only tools to really clear your board from off the board. So now, Ball Control has a combination of 2 of them, the Knife Juggler and the Soulfire, and he's going to line up this 100% of the time into a Silverware Golem. This has been a very swingy back and forth Zoo Mirror, but this, I think, could just be the crushing blow now for Ball Control.
Especially if this Knife Juggler hits. Looking for the proc onto Doomguard, it doesn't proc, and we'll just go up towards face instead. Does that Knife Juggler just not proc on?
No, it happened before the animation
Oh,
appeared.
okay, that's why I missed it. I was wondering.
It's like the Soulfire happens, the game registers that there's another minion there, and then the actual animation happens for it to appear.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter anyway. We'll be able to clear it off the board. Dark Peddler, a good draw here for Ben. Probably looking towards the Void Walker, in all honesty. Tentacle of Unzoth is another option. But you definitely don't want to take the Reliquary. I can never pronounce that.
Reliquary.
Are you sure that's it?
I'm pretty confident.
100%?
99.3.
That's a good percentage. And it is going to be the Tentacle coming out. Doomguard in the hand. Ball control, perhaps? No, well, I don't see why you wouldn't just Doomguard her.
I mean, he's already has one Silverware Golem on the board, so there's no way on earth that he's tapping.
Yeah, you don't tap for another
He's
one.
considering the options of the Tentacle of N'Zoth, basically, because he knows when the minions are played that knives are going to get thrown, so he's figuring out what he wants to do if that Tentacle of N'Zoth's Death Rattle was to get activated by the Knife Juggler.
That makes sense. How would you play it if you were going to do it? Do you take the Dark Peddler off the board with your Councilman? Do you swing that Silverware Golem into the Darkshire Councilman just to try and get it low enough that it might get hit by Knife Jugglers?
Tough. I think value trade the Golem into the 2/2 and then attack face with the Knife Juggler and then play Doomguard, see what happens, is probably my line, just to make sure you've got everything out of the way that can get affected. But he's actually just going to straight up value trade off the Knife Juggler.
Means you're not going to proc the Tentacle.
Yeah, very true.
Although it looks like that might be what he's pointing at the moment. That would seem a little bit odd to me, procking it early on.
Yeah, it's unusual.
Doesn't really matter that much. He will be able to trade in and can pop that Doomguard towards the face as well. Malchus does impact slightly late there. Would have liked that slightly earlier in the turn, but of course couldn't have played it if he had that Doomguard still in hand. And as you say, this is the turn that has turned the tides in board control's favor. Looks like he's just going to 3-0 with his Warlock deck. Did lose, of course, with the Druid earlier on, but able to close out the series, and that's the second in a row in which he has gone 3-1.
Yeah, exactly the same story that we saw in the first series, losing the opener, but then coming back with one of those high sweep potential decks. And remember, Zoo is a deck that he didn't have in his opening game of the day, and then he's switched it in specifically to target at Ben, and what a decision that turned out to be with the deck sweeping 3-0.
Definitely, and I think you have to give credit to Ball Control as well. We've always talked about him as one of the best players in the UK. Yeah. Had a very bad start to the UK Masters, now coming back and is showing us that he can master a variety of different decks. He doesn't need to sit on these 2 or 3 main decks that he plays. Instead, he understands his matchup, he understands his opponent, and he plays the decks that will win against them.
Yeah, and this is a testament to really high-level players. You know, a lot of players can play, 1 or 2 decks that they've put a few hundred games into. But when you get to the upper echelon of players, these are players that have put 500 games plus into every deck, right? They know the intricacies, they know the matchups, they know high-level stuff about all of these decks. And Ball Control is one of those players. You know, fantastic practice regime, a lot of great practice partners, and a great brain for the game in general. Honestly, a great natural talent.
That he is. Well, next up is Pittas, or Pittas, depending on how you want to pronounce it, one of the two, against Epiphany. It will be in just a few minutes' time, so make sure you guys stay tuned. But for now, we're going to take a quick break as we get ready to get into the action. I'm Sona, this is Sottle, and we'll see you guys in a few.
Alright, so a while back I sold out to Game, who paid me money and gave me a load of free stuff just for mentioning their deals on my channel. Well, Game have decided to offer the same sweet deal to any other gamers who fancy selling out to them. All you have to do is go to this website, fill out a form, and then their marketing people will be in touch, or something like that. In my opinion, you should all do this. That's just my opinion. Hi everyone. Two really weird things have happened this week. First, I signed this legally binding contract and got paid a load of money to advertise games deals. And then, literally, a couple of days after that, I managed to get NBA 2K17 for the low price of $34.99 on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One at Game, saving £15. Crazy days.
Hello guys and welcome back to the UK Masters. I am Sona, this is Subtle, and we're about to get into our final series of the evening.
Looking forward to it. Epiphany, again, I spoke about this before, but he, again, is someone that I'm so proud to see in some of these huge UK tournaments,
Yeah.
you know, playing at the top level of the UK scene, because he's someone that I've seen come up. Originally, when I first got to know him, he was almost exclusively an arena player, but an extremely good one. And I think the difference between arena and constructed gets overstated a lot. I think if you're a good Hearthstone player, you're a good Hearthstone player, and Epiphany has kind of hammered home that point by making the transition over to constructed very nicely indeed.
He is sitting at 2-1 as well at the moment, so in a pretty good spot. If he wins out today, will be one of the highest ranked players on the UK Masters ladder, 3-2, sitting only behind Ting Ting. 3-1, sorry, sitting only behind Ting Ting, I do believe. Pitas has had sort of the other end of the stick. He's sitting at 0-4, not being as consistent as he'd like. Sometimes it's been just a little bit of the luck of the draw of the cards. Sometimes it has just been him not playing as well as his opponent.
Yeah, and I think this particular matchup kind of shows the difference in, you know, hard work paying off, because I think Pitas has, you know, treated this tournament as a bit of fun on occasion, hasn't taken it entirely seriously, whereas Epiphany, I know personally, has put hours and hours and hours into preparation every single week, figuring out what he wants to play, what trends can he get from his opponent, what lineup does he want to bring, making sure he's up to scratch with all the decks. And you're seeing that hard work pay off. Epiphany and Pitas, you know, two players from a fairly similar, unknown-ish background, but Epiphany overperforming in this tournament, Pitas perhaps underperforming.
Both players' Shaman decks were banned out, and we're going to see the Warrior into Warlock matchup to start us off. Looks to be that discard lock as you'd expect from Pitas. Epiphany's Warrior has a little bit of everything. I saw a Disciple of Cthulhu there, and I saw an Elise Starseeker as well. So perhaps slightly later control, a bit more Cthulhu in the earlier game?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I don't know the exact list, but often it's a decision between Elise or Doomcaller in terms of like which win condition you want to be able to absolutely smash control to pieces. Very rare to see both, but if there is a possibility that there's both in this list from Epiphany, then he might put Pitas on, you know, playing some greedier lists and some control decks and wanting to make sure he smashes them out. But Cthulhu Warrior here, classically, Control Warrior was a deck that got beat up by Zoo quite effectively, but Zoo has lost quite a lot of its aggression. A lot of its minions have been reduced in power over time.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, because I know our production won't notice what's going on the screen. Charlie Tizzard, can you please move the mouse away from the Voidwalker? Because all we can see is that Voidwalker on the screen. Thank you very much. Anyway, we are back into the action. Couple of early Malcazar's Imps, Voidwalker down, as you can all know by now. And it is an Acolyte of Pain coming out from Epiphany as well.
It is indeed, and yeah, the point I was making is perfectly illustrated by this board right now, because Zoo in the past used to be able to go like Flame Imp into a 3-2 Knife Juggler into, you know, Imp Gang Boss, and suddenly there's this huge amount of power on the board that if Warrior misses Fiery War Axe, it's almost game over because of the huge beatdown that they're giving. But now, most of their minions have 1 or 2 power, so Warrior can just sit and tank it for a while, literally tank up in situations after Justicar has come down, and it really does come down to these 2 power minions, the Imp Gang Boss, these 3, the Imp Gang Boss, the Darkshire Councilman, and the Doom Guard, to be able to get work done for the Zoo.
It's going to discard the Darkshire Councilman. Didn't want the Acolyte getting too many card draws out. Draws into the Abusive Sergeant as well, so we'll be happy enough with that. If you're Epiphany here, are you still just looking at the slow roll? It looks like Elise, mostly because this can test with anything on board, can trade pretty effectively with anything, and might even draw that Doom Guard out to try for the more aggressive play.
That Doom Guard is going to draw 4 cards off this discard. Like, I would be amazed to not see it come down here.
I'm amazed as well.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so sure. Like, maybe he's trying to pull out the Brawl here and then potentially just use Doom Guard to refill after a Brawl comes out, if it does. But from my perspective, firstly, if they don't have the Brawl, you win the game immediately. Secondly, if they do have the Brawl, you're cycling 4 cards off the damn Doom Guard anyway. Like, what more do you want? Pitas even goes and rounds out proceedings by tapping. What?
It's just the way that you said, oh, well, he tapped last. It is a bad play, we totally agree. That's still one of the Malcazar's Imps surviving makes this pretty easy for Pitas. We'll flame him into that Doom Guard, representing quite a lot of damage. You know, it's going to take him down to 16 here. Will make it very difficult for 15 here. And we'll draw into a Direwolf Alpha, which means that next turn you are sitting very close to dead.
It's true, but there is, 9 damage in play. So as soon as you get to this position where you have 6 or more mana available and you have Justicar in your hand, the first question to ask yourself as a control warrior always is, can I afford to play Justicar this turn? Because the long-term investment of that card is so enormous. So he's at 15, there is 9 damage in play, so he would need an additional 6 to get the job done, and he's already seen 1 Doomguard and 1 Soulfire be used, as well as Direwolves and Abusive Sergeants. So I love this play. It has additional upside as well, because you actually want to take more damage right now, because you have Revenge in your hand. So you want to tank damage before you start gaining armor as Control Warrior when you're playing Revenge in your deck.
It will be the Direwolf coming out. It does just look like Pissas is doing what you'd expect from a Zoolock and just going face as much as he can. Might, like, in your mind, as a Warlock here, you're thinking, if he has Revenge, you can clear my board pretty easily. But I can't play around it, because if I try and play around it, I'm just going to lose the long game anyway. So I have to go face, I have to be aggressive, and looks like he's actually going to tap last again. Oh, come on, man. Come on. Piss us, please.
Ooh, the Fiery War Axe pickup is a really big deal. The Revenge Execute is actually, I think he may have played this a little bit too quickly. He could have War Axe down the Void Walker and then traded the Justicar into the Doomguard, then revenged afterwards, clearing the board, holding on to his Execute. So I think Epiphany may have played that turn a little bit too quickly. He's out an Execute that he didn't necessarily need to there.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have that Execute back in hand, especially for a future Doomguard. If you need it. Does still have the ability to tank up a little bit with that shield block and of course with the tank up hero power, but with that no like real damage coming out, no Soulfire or anything off that Dark Peddler, the Flame Imp is the only draw. It looks like Pitsas is just going to roll out the forces and see if Epiphany has an answer. Shield Slam, you've got shield block as well, you've got tank up. He can get himself pretty far away from lethal with his current hand.
He can, but that Fiery War Axe comes down and takes up 2 of his mana straight away. We'll see if this punishes him after the shield block. Now, he draws an expensive card, but a cheaper card being drawn there, say Disciple of Cthulhu number 2, that War Axe not being equipped already could have ended up punishing him, not just in terms of not having the Execute anymore, but also in the tempo implications of not having that mana already spent on the following turn.
It gets you in range for Shield Bearer next turn as well, because I'm pretty sure that Cthulhu's sitting at an 8/8
8/8 right now,
so having a second Disciple would have got that Shield Bearer online, meant that you could gain more armor next turn. Not going to mind it too much, as you say, because he drew the Twin Emperor. But Sylvanas there as well. Lots of heavy mana minions here, actually making it a little bit more tricky for Epiphany to decide exactly how he wants to play.
Yeah, and again, just hand a little bit awkward here, because the Darkshire Councilman needs to be dealt with. The only way to deal with it is the Gorehowl, and again, I mean, I don't want to keep harping on about this, but the play kind of dictates that I keep talking about it. If that War Axe came down a turn earlier, both of those charges would have been used already before the Gorehowl came down. He would still have an Execute in his hand that can pair together with any spot removal thing that he pulls up, Ravaging Ghoul, Disciple of Cthulhu number 2, etc.
Hey, Pinas life tap first!
Hey!
Hey! That's Dark Peddler in hand as well. So Soulfire should be the draw here, in all honesty, looking to discard that Silverware Golem. The question is, do you go Darkshire Councilman, Darkshire Librarian first and hope, or do you Soulfire and hope? Because either way, you're 50-50ing it.
It's a very good question. I think the Soulfire here is more important than the Librarian, because you just really want to push through that damage. The extra 3/2 on the board doesn't really make too much of a difference. Like, you get beaten by the same things, right? You get beaten by Brawl number 2 and Revenge number 2. That's what you lose to in this situation. So that 1 extra minion on the board, to my mind, doesn't have a huge impact, but discarding the Soulfire could have actually had very serious implications. So I personally would have seen it done the other way around.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think having that Soulfire does, just pushes 4 damage straight through. Now, Twin Emperor does provide a little bit of taunt here, but you can get through it with the Silverware Golem and the Librarian, and then you've just got lethal sitting in the rest of your... No, you're 1 short. 1 short of lethal if you do it that way. Gorehowl still on the cards as well. Pretty sure you're 1 short. 6, 7.
No, 6 would go in. There'd be
6,
7 going face against
7,
6 health, so it would be lethal in the end.
So it's going to map to the Golden Monkey to look to see what he draws off this. It's going to be Baron Geddon. Can't play it because he kills himself.
Well, he can play it. It is a legal play.
Okay, yes.
probably not correct unless Epiphany does want to just put himself out of his misery, because no matter what he does in this situation, he is very much just dead. I think the one thing he'll be looking at here is whether he can play the Veclaw and create any weird breakpoints, but that would have been involving armoring up as well. You know, play the Veclaw and kill one of the 3/3s, for example, would have made him have to trade it inefficiently, potentially, but that's not even the case. And Pitas does get that Zoo deck to go through as well. Epiphany really just looked at a clunky draw that game, had the power minions that he needed in his hand, the Shield Bearer and the Veclaw, but didn't get the activators in time to get them there, which meant that he was just left a little bit helpless against Zoo.
Very low on activators, in all honesty. Like, we only saw the Disciple of Cthulhu. I don't know what he's running.
I know Epiphany personally hates the 2-mana 2/3, whose name I always forget, because we just call it River Croc. Beckoner of Evil,
Beckoner of Evil, yeah.
He hates that card. Literally just like, oh, why do people put River Crocolisk in their deck? It's garbage, etc., etc. Right, and I mean, yeah, we potentially see his deck building decisions being punished there. If that's the case, I have no idea whether it's in the deck or not. I just know that is a personal bias that he has.
Okay, well, we are into the next game. Warlock providing to be very powerful over this weekend. It is going to be Hunter into the Warlock. Epiphany deciding that he wants to run Hunter up against this discard lock. Sorry.
Zoo. Very interesting decision, because again, we talked about how the mid-range list is actually very much unfavored against Zoo. It's one of the decks that can just really go too quick for it, leverage the board very quickly, just beat up the Hunter before they can really get started with those powerful mid-game minions. So I would suspect that what we're looking at here from Epiphany is a more aggressive list with explosive traps, charge minions that can really just take the fight to Zoo past the board and not on the board.
Pretty nice early draw as well. Secret Keeper can come down this turn, allows you to play the secrets next turn, of course. Snipe and Freezing Trap stuck in the hand there. So Cloaked Huntress, getting those out for free definitely helps you buff that Secret Keeper pretty easily. And I was slightly surprised by the Voidwalker play first from Pisas, because he did have Malchezaar's Imp and a Darkshire Librarian in hand. Maybe just didn't want to play around perhaps discarding this this Soulfire.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he just didn't necessarily intend to play the 3/2 on the following turn, and if the Soulfire was the play, he could always just do this in the same turn anyway and potentially not expose his Malchezaar's Imp to coin Quickshot, maybe. Make sure he got some value out of it, but the Soulfire is huge, because if that Secret Keeper was left to live, the play was going to be Coin Cloaked Huntress, ruin your life from Epiphany. He can still do a certain amount of that in this position, but without the Secret Keeper to get buffed and then get a huge value trade into the Voidwalker, it's much less powerful.
In all honesty, Secret Fear is one of the most frustrating things to have to play in, because you have to work out what secrets they are and then work out how you're going to play around them. And is it Snipe? Is it Freezing Trap? Is it Explosive Trap? Is it Bear Trap? Is it I've been killed a couple of times by a Dart Trap, which is like so rarely you see it. And it's just like, oh, I've used my hero power and then I've just taken 5 damage to face. Excellent.
Sona, you've just exposed your rank 15
meta
right? to the world.
I know. Hey, I got up to like rank 8 last season. Nice. Hey, it's the same rank as Pisas on ladder. So. And Pisas is now rank 6 wild, I think, rank 8 wild.
I mean,
something on that now.
If he can brave the desolate wastelands of wild, he is a braver man than I.
Dr. Boom has done a good job of mutually assuring the destruction of wild. Freezing Trap still up here. I believe it was the Snipe that was triggered by the Voidwalker. And Pisas just trying to work out exactly what he wants to play. It's going to be Knife Juggler coming down. Oh, there is the Snipe. So Freezing Trap is already triggered.
Yeah, 3-mana Malchezaar's Imp.
I'm looking at the wrong screen. So I couldn't actually see his hand.
Yeah, froze the Malchezaar's Imp, Snipe on the Knife Juggler. So now actually no real tempo cards in hand, which means the Cloaked Huntress itself now has the ability to start getting some value trades into this board. And Unleash the Hounds here, one of the most valuable cards in the deck for sure, but there was the opportunity there just to play it out, get the 2/1/1 Hounds, just essentially not to float a turn and just go face with them. Just occupy the board with a couple of annoying things and follow up with Infested Wolf on the next turn. But definitely no dispute that holding onto it is a hugely valuable tool in this matchup.
Yeah, especially when Zoo wants to try and fill out that board a little bit more. Allows you just to counter it slightly. Infested Wolf will come down, and still that Cloaked Huntress is doing absolute work clearing out these Voidwalkers. Just taking anything off the board it can. Imp Gang Boss is a pretty powerful play here, because you're always guaranteed, pretty much, unless someone uses a kill command, to get at least 1 or 2 imps out of it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely reasonable, especially since it curves out so well with that Direwolf, which is a huge drop here because of the way it allows the Possessed Villager to trade into that Huntress that has just been single-handedly tearing his board apart for the last turn or two. So just for curve reasons, it's hugely powerful. Looks like Titus was just mousing over the life tap there for a second, which would have really surprised me. I just imagine he needs to go onto this board right now and really utilize all his mana to try and fight back against the Hunter.
Yeah, I think you put that Imp Gang boss next to that Direwolf as well to make sure it can trade into the Infested Wolf if it needs to. Actually going to put it out over to the side, so why would you do that rather than just putting it next to the Direwolf?
Well, the problem with Imp Gang boss is that when it trades, it spawns an additional token minion next to it, so you can't get like the daisy chain effect with a Direwolf because you trade off one minion, the next one slides over and gets buffed, etc. So if you put Imp Gang boss next to a Direwolf, that process gets interrupted because the Imp Gang boss immediately spawns another one.
That makes sense.
Leroy Jenkins is in the deck from Epiphany. I said this was probably a more aggressive list if he was willing to queue it into Zoo. It's also a reason why he would potentially hold on to Unleash the Hounds, because those two cards actually do synergize together as a finisher. So no great surprise to me here to see that Leroy in the deck. And now with the hand that he has, the Explosive Trap, the Unleash, and the Leroy, it might just be face time very soon for Epiphany.
Well, there is the Unleash the Hounds coming out perhaps a couple of turns early. We'll be looking for the Leroy next turn, just trading in. Going to try and clear out this board from Pissas. We'll be able to take out most of it. Does still have that Infested Wolf sitting on the back line as well, which trades pretty nicely with the remaining board here from Pissas. Pissas not really got enough in hand to do much, has now drawn a Silverware Golem, which is still not really what he wanted. Probably going to Malcazar's infill, use that Flame Imp first as well, and actually just puts this Silverware Golem down straight out of hand. So decides he doesn't want to try and get the discard effects, using it more just for its 3/3 value.
Yeah, it never feels great when you have to pay mana for the Silverware Golem, knowing that it can come out for free. But, you know, 3/3 versus a 1/3 that turn. He was paying 3 mana either way, so just wants the additional power on board. The important thing to realize as Zoo in this matchup is, yes, you're quite often favored against many builds of Hunter, but you do have to get the job done.
Yeah.
Like, the longer you wait, the more turns you give to the opponent to draw Unleash the Hounds, Explosive Trap, press their hero power every single turn. The longer you allow that to happen, the more it starts to tilt back towards the other way, because the way the hero powers interact is not favorable for you. They both kill the same person, and it doesn't end well for you.
So, probably looking at Explosive Trap and Catrick here wants to use as well the hero power, as you say. A lot of hunters do worry about hero power efficiency. You want to be trying to use it as often as possible to try and take the enemy low. Doesn't need to be playing, you know, Leroy Jenkins or that Infested Wolf yet. Very happy to let Pissas think he has control of the board until he swings into face.
Yeah, the hero power is essentially just card draw for hunters. You know, how many lists of hunter do you see that play actual card draw effects? Like, sometimes we see tracking, but that's not just card draw. That's actually a trainer for your deck. So sometimes, you know, curator lists we saw got experimented with a bit, but you just draw a 2-mana arcane shot every single turn, which is pretty much what you want as Hunter, just to get that job done consistently. So pressing hero power efficiency, as you put it, is a very big deal, especially when you're playing these more aggressive lists with the charge minions as well.
We used to see the Buzzard decks.
Yes.
That was when I got to high levels, because you could just auto just everything face and you'd win the game. I was the sort of person that I hate to meet on ladder these days. There is the Explosive Track triggered. Darkshire Counterman will come down as well. Dark Peddler just putting something on the board as well as getting the Soulfire out, which would have been handy a turn ago when the Silverware Golem was in hand, but Savannah High Main.
What is
perfect.
this list?
Well, it's perfect, man. You know, a little bit of high end, a little bit of low end. It feels a bit like Epiphany has actually optimized this list to go up against Pissas and this Warlock, because you've got enough low end to trade into the Warlock, and then you've got the high end just to win the game. Yeah,
I mean, it's huge. Having the high main in here as well in this situation is just massive. You know, I was expecting to see Wolf Riders and Argent Horse Riders and things like that coming out of the deck. I wasn't expecting to see a high main. So this may just actually be a more mid-rangey list, just with the addition of that Leroy for some reach and the synergy with the Unleash the Hounds that he's playing as well.
And the Explosive Trap, of course, working really well into aggro. You don't always see that in Hunter decks. Some people do decide not to run the Explosive Trap if they're playing more into a control matchup. Usually double Freezing Trap, double Catch It, you know, looking at that sort of end of things. But Epiphany here, you have to think is in a very good spot. Especially considering he has lethal this time.
Yes, nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
Top level analysis right there.
The two whelps come out, buffing up the councilman, but no mind for Epiphany. He does just have lethal. The combination of the two cards rarely seen together these days. The Highmane and the Leroy end up finishing the game, and this is what I said at the lead-in to this game, is that Epiphany has put hours and hours of work into his deck building and his strategies every single week, and that is an unconventional Hunter deck that we're seeing from him, but straight away, you see him paying dividends against the Zoo.
In all honesty, playing Arena helps you out a lot with that as well, because deck building in Arena, you're only getting 3 cards at a time. You learn a lot of the weird combos that perhaps you wouldn't see usually on standard ladder, and it allows you to know all the cards that can be played and how they synergize well together.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that it's Hearthstone knowledge, right? And it's something that you build up over time. I think the one thing that you do need to learn potentially coming over to Constructed is just meta knowledge. Basically, you need to understand what the Constructed meta looks like, but your Hearthstone mechanics and your interaction of your card interactions and mechanics actually are often better as an Arena player, because that's essentially all Arena comes down to a lot of the time.
And you don't have a guide on the internet saying this is what you should do every turn with this deck. You can't just net deck everything. It is going to be Hunter into
Reno Mage.
Yeah, Reno Mage. I was just looking at it and I was shocked. I can't remember the last time I've seen a Reno Mage at like a sort of competitive level.
I think Hello Leroy is kind of infamous of being a bit of a fan of Reno Mages and has brought it to 1 or 2 UK tournaments recently, but yeah, this even looks like a slightly funky list even of Reno Mage, which is a funky deck in the first place, because we saw Corrupted Seer get mulliganed away from the opening hand.
I don't understand why that would be funky. Sounds like a truly powerful card to me. Arcane Blast to take out the Secret Keeper early on. Just try to stop any tempo that Epiphany might be able to garner. And having Reno in hand early is very strong here for Pizzazz, because he knows he always has that get out of jail free card.
Did you say tempo? How is a 3-mana 3/4 plus 4 mana's worth of secrets for free?
Well, that tends to work out pretty well, but imagine there'd been a Secret Keeper there as well.
Yeah, it's just very, very true. Definitely a threat that needs to be eliminated immediately. Pizzazz does pick up the Arcane Blast, one of probably 2 tools in his deck that would have got that job done. The 1 Arcane Blast, and I assume 1 Frostbolt in the deck as well. So.
Wait, it's a big assumption to make.
It is, I know, I'm really putting my neck on the line there. This deck plays a Frostbolt. I tell you what else it plays is the Curator, because that is a Corrupted Seer and a Stampeding Kodo in this deck. That is a Beast and a Murloc. Dragon is the easy one to fulfill, so I'm sure this is a Curator Reno Mage that we are looking at right now.
How much do you know about Curator Reno Mage?
Everything.
You know everything about
ask me anything you like.
Okay, what's their 5-drop?
As you Drake.
There we go.
Boom!
Mate, I set you up for a knowledge bomb and you cracked it out of the park. Well done, man. We'll be seeing that Forbidden Flame taking out the Cloaked Huntress, and it looks like just steady shot kill here is the plan for Epiphany. Now, you're only 1 turn away from Reno if you want it. Of course, don't want to play it this early. You want to be waiting a little bit longer. But already Pizzazz feels behind in this game. You've got Leroy and Savannah Highmane in hand for Epiphany. Is there a way for Pizzazz to win this out? Is he just going to continue trying to control the board until late game?
I think there absolutely is a way he wins. He basically just has to beat this Highmane based on what we see. Unless Epiphany draws a lot more powerful mid-game minions, Infested Wolves, second Highmane. I don't know if there's a Rag in this deck alongside the Savannah Highmane, Leroy, Madness.
Three Call of the Wild somehow.
Right, yeah. I don't know what quite is happening with this deck, but if he's able to stabilize against the minions that Epiphany plays out here, then that Reno already being in hand is going to mean that the Leroy kill command hero power strategy, that's not going to work. That's not going to get the job done. Epiphany's going to have to stick a board this game. That's a huge pickup to follow
Having
up
Savannah, and then, as you say, rounding it out with those more mid-rangey picks are very important. Ethereal Conjurer, 7 mana here. You got Reno, you want to wait probably 1 more turn for that. You don't really want to be waiting until you're down to 50, like less than 12 is where I'd be definitely calling the line. Anything from 15 and above when you've got 9 on board and you've got kill commands and hero powers there as well is a little bit tricky. So 1 more turn is all that Pizzazz can wait on that Reno, or Reno, as some people call it.
Please stop! Please!
Every time. You have got Flame Lance as well if you want to deal with the Savannah. So Probably Flame Lance here, trade into the Cloaked Huntress as well with your Elise if you want to just try and clear that board. And you've got the Stampeding Kodo to try and clear out some of those 2/2s.
It's pronounced Cloaked Huntress, actually.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Cloact.
Just want to make sure I'm taking care of you. I know you don't. You're lacking a bit of experience in Hearthstone casting. You got to get these card names right.
Okay, I'll try.
Runs out on me.
So, do you just clear the board here? Do you just get rid of that Savannah? You leave 2/2s up, but you don't really care too much about that. Looks like he's actually just going to pop the freezing trap and be able to put another map to the Golden Monkey in his deck. What? That's a 1 in 15 chance, although he's probably sitting at about 20 cards now, so that's a 1 in...
What? worst maths ever. But
What is the
Pittus
2
right
chances
now...
that he draws 1 of his 2 maps?
Yeah, that's just how it works. 50-50. He either draws it or he doesn't. Pittus here is just trying to set up the situation. Colt Sword straight into Arcane Explosion is a 2-turn board clear, essentially, is what he's done here with the Flame Lance. But unfortunately, Epiphany can force him into a situation here where he has to Reno as well as clear the board. And this is the situation that you want to put Reno decks in. And I'm sure Epiphany has a potential read on this as a Reno deck already based on some of the cards that he's seen. So right now, just Reno for 6 mana, you can still potentially beat that. And any board clear that comes out means that now Reno can't come down and hit the board. You don't have lethal unless you stick 1 damage on the board to follow this up. But still, it's put yourself in a very comfortable position to ask maximum questions.
That's what we were saying from Pittus as well. He needs to Reno when he's sitting at that 15 and below mark, because otherwise he knows that there's Kill Command, he knows there's Leroy Jenkins, he knows Eaglehawk Bows are somewhere in that deck as well. It makes it very easy for Epiphany to win it out if that happens. He's going to put the Blood Mage down as well, so he has got that Arcane Explosion next turn, as you say. But it actually looks like this is just going to be the Cat Trick coming out. Not a wasted turn. You still have Cat Trick and you know you're playing into a lot of spells, but not the turn that Epiphany wanted.
Yeah, Cat Trick is potentially huge here because there is only 1 spell in hand as of right now for Pittus, and that is the Arcane Explosion, which means even if Arcane Explosion clears here, there will be a 4/2 cat on the board, and just that plus the Leroy will get the job done. But now there is a potential double board clear if Pittus wants to spend his whole turn on doing it. But even again in that situation, 3 from the bow, 6 from the Leroy, 2 from the hero power, he will still be dead.
Yep, still lethal. You can't have double Reno in a Reno deck. It's always been my main issue with it as a deck. Just not being able to play that Reno twice.
It's always that moment when you're playing Reno against Hunter and they play a secret and you just attack with it. It's like, please be dumb enough to have played Freezing Trap, please. Like, no, gets the bad news that it's Cat Trick in the end. And this is just going to be Epiphany with Leroy #2 for win #2 with this. I want to call it Hybrid Hunter, but Hybrid Hunter is actually a very specific deck, which is not just Hunter and put Leroy in it, which is what appears to be this from Epiphany. So this is really just a mid-range Hunter verging on the quick side that he's slapped Leroy in as well.
It really suits the flavor of Leroy, because the whole rest of the deck is like pure strategy, people gathering around, we're gonna work out how to defeat the enemy, we're gonna work it out, and then he's just got this one card that's like, no, I'm going in, guys! Going in, we're gonna do it!
Halfway through, I realized where you were going with that. I was like, yeah, you know what? That's pretty good. I like it.
That's exactly how Epiphany builds his decks as well. It's all flavorful all the time, and he is going to have Hunter win out once again. It will be Hunter versus Rogue to finish us off for the night. Now, Rogue, not a deck we see that commonly, Soso.
It's
not
no.
at this sort of tournament.
No, it's had a little bit of a renaissance recently. People are, particularly in best of 7 formats, there's always an argument about what's the best 5th deck, right?
Yeah.
You ban 1, you have to play 4 decks, so what's the best 5th deck to bring to the tournament? It often rotates between like Hunter, Tempo Mage, and now Rogue is really in that argument as well, as some people are bringing it. But a surprise for me to see it brought in a 3-deck format, essentially, or a 4-deck format with 1 ban. But
are you surprised by the fact there's a Leroy in this Rogue as well?
I'm not. No, I mean, Malagos Rogue is perhaps the most common variant to run into on ladder, but I actually think the most powerful version for me is Questing Adventurer Rogue, which does have a Leroy in it as well a lot of the time to push aggression. So wouldn't be surprised if that's what we're looking at here from Pittus. But there was also a version played in the BlizzCon Top 8, which didn't really have any hardcore win condition. It just kind of had Leroy and Coldblood in there alongside Auctioneers. No Malagos, no Questing Adventurers, none of that. So it could be that deck as well.
I mean, when you say he didn't have a hard win condition, and then you say had Leroy and Coldblood in it, that's your win condition.
Right, but like Malagos can actually do 30.
Yeah.
A Questing Adventurer can just stick to the board and just kill you if it's not dealt with. Whereas, you know, Leroy, Coldblood, it's 14. Like, it's not that impressive.
And I'm impressed when I can do 14 damage. So maybe you've got higher expectations.
You clearly never played Miracle Rogue in the Leroy Shadow Step, Leroy Shadow Step, Leroy Coldblood meta.
Oh, that sounds disgusting.
Because that was possible back in the days of 4-mana Leroy.
Good old days of 4-mana Leroy. That's also what helped me get face hunters
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
Undercity Husker comes down. It's the kindly grandmother to meet it as well. And here comes the Cloak Huntress into double trap. It's always the snipe. What, the Cloak Huntress?
Epiphany has just drawn the Stone Cold Cashews
Yeah.
with this deck every single game. Just Secret Keeper into 2 secrets every single time.
And I'm pretty sure
so
like it's
far.
always been Snipe Freezing Trap as well.
Yeah, I believe it's so,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. It's kind of crazy.
You know, you said you couldn't shuffle your deck to manipulate the card draw. Epiphany's worked it out. He's had an epiphany. And now all he sees on that screen is 1s and 0s. It's like the Matrix. 1s and 0s just goes across the screen.
Sorry, complete no-sell on the joke. I apologize. Shadow Strike.
Sometimes that's funny.
comes out. Shadow Strike comes out, which is kind of interesting from Pittus because he had the opportunity to just develop minions there and not be punished by the threat of Catrick in that situation. So I guess now having I was going to say with the knowledge now that it wasn't Catrick, he could have played the coin to develop in that situation. But coin, a very, very high value card in Rogue, particularly if he's playing the questing build, as we suspect he might be. Although the Hucksters maybe point away from that a little bit, especially with Swashbucklers in there as well. There might just not be room for all of that stuff.
We'll get that first Swashbuckler sniped away. Probably just going to play the second one here. Can eviscerate, of course, onto that animal companion. It makes sense to take that away, but you've got a second Swashbuckler.
Yep.
Get yourself a little bit of force state. You're not losing out too early on. Don't want to be taking 4 damage to face.
Ooh.
And ooh, indeed.
Arcane Shot is actually a really nice pickup. Ram Wrangler was definitely a complete whiff.
Oh, it's the best pickup.
Yeah, hey, I mean, 1-mana spell that actually reacts to the board state, shuts down aggression. That's exactly what you want in this kind of situation against the aggressive hunter from Epiphany. So, first Swashbuckler. Bugler? Swashbuckler? What is that? Swashbuckler not so kind to Pittus, but the second one getting the job done, and I think I am now solo casting this game.
This guy's
You've been teasing me all day about my pronunciation.
What I should have done is just
Somehow
committed.
with that.
I should have just committed.
I know what a swashbuckler is.
You give me a weird look. Be like, no, it's Bugler. It's Swashbuckler. I'm telling you, man.
Can you stop saying that on stream, please? Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on. I apologise, guys. That was an interesting moment to say the least. How does it feel not being hired by Blizzard anymore?
Oh,
No, they
yeah.
won't be watching this.
I've said way worse things than that on stream before.
I know the
Got away with
feeling.
it. Yeah.
I know the feeling. Anyway, back into the action. Sossel,
Mm.
or Sutil, is apparently an
Yeah,
outlet.
that is how you pronounce it.
Savannah High Main here. It looks to be the obvious option.
Yeah. It's the obvious option in most matchups. When you are playing against Rogue, there is always the threat that Sap is going to come down and ruin your day when you play a high main. So you do have to consider that option. But Epiphany just considers the bow play too weak, I guess. And he's going to allow the Sap play from Pittus if he has it. Not only does he have to have a Sap, he has to have something to develop behind it to actually net some tempo as well to really punish this and stop him just replaying the high main on the next turn.
So what do you develop? Do you Undercity Huckster just to get that out? You know, it's 4 mana. You're going to have board control anyway. Do you just get that out so you can start to cycle a few more cards? You've got Gadgets and Auctioneer next turn as well.
Yeah, I mean, he could have coined the Ram Wrangler, but that's not much of an improvement over the 2/2, and he really wants that coin to hang around for the Auctioneer at this point. So the Huckster alongside it looks reasonable, but this isn't a huge amount of pressure, honestly. This doesn't create the situation I spoke about, which is high main can't just come straight back down immediately, but having now picked up the Infested Wolf Epiphany decides this is a suitably awkward board to pass up the high main, take the free mana to develop the bow instead.
The thing is, if the high main comes back down, you do have Sinister Strike, so you can deal with it. You know, you let out those 2/2s, but you can, you know, put 5 damage onto it and actually get rid of the big face 6 damage. However, as you say, because he's got a little bit more efficient way of using his mana, he's going to clear out the board a little bit with the Eagle Horn Bow. And now it makes it difficult. You've got double gadgets and Auctioneer in hand as well, which isn't the best situation here for Pistas. Can play one and kind of accept that it'll probably be traded, but got a coin just for the cycle. I wouldn't expect him to use Conceal here, in all honesty.
You wouldn't?
I think you can, but why? Like, all you're doing is cycling one card with your Conceal when you could use that for something stronger later on.
Right, but you also are keeping an Auctioneer on the board, which means you can cycle, you know,
cycle
10
next turn.
cards
Yes,
next
that's true.
turn
That's
if you really
true.
get things together.
That's my misthinking.
So
you are right, Sutil. Good job, Sotler.
Thank you, Suna. Infested Wolf going face, though, and Pistas can cycle his deck as much as he wants in this situation, but unless he can force through lethal of his own, he's going to have to A, find a way to deal with this high main, and B, set up a very quick lethal of his own, because Epiphany has a very real 2-turn clock, even purely from hand in this situation.
He does have the Ram Wrangler Beast combo now, though, with the kindly grandmother that he stole away.
Does?
So,
wow.
Big plays, boys, big plays. He's going to Sinister Strike on towards that Savannah. Has Phantom Knives as well if he can find a way to activate it, but at the moment, a way to activate it is looking a little bit far off. We'll just trade in Phantom Knives, and we'll still have a couple of hyenas on the board that we have to deal with. There's the Cold Blood.
There's the prep as well, meaning this Auctioneer can really go off this turn if he wants to. But it looks like just a slow play for now with the dagger. Not going to see the prep used. They are going to see the prep used.
Oh, he's hovering.
Intrigues me why he felt like daggering first in that situation. Could have prepped straight into the second Phantom Knives, for example, and then saved the dagger damage. He's going to abyss the face here, trying to set up a counterpunch lethal of his own. But now that means, well, the second kill command makes it a absolute formality. Leaving that 2-1 up on the board means that Epiphany gets the job done with face damage, and unfortunately the kindly grandmother Ram Wrangler combo is not going to have a chance to come into play.
It makes me quite sad, in all honesty, not seeing that combo come out. It is going to be lethal coming out for Epiphany. It's the third time in the night we have seen a 1-0 opponent, 1-0 down, go 3-1 at the end of the game with the same deck, twice Hunter, once Warlock, and this time it's Epiphany's chance to now go 3-1 in the UK Masters.
Yeah, and honestly, huge performance from him. I know that he was really like viewing this as a big opportunity for him to really get his name out there, at least in the UK scene, use that as a platform to move forward, as he really is committed to Constructed at this point. And I do believe he is a very talented Hearthstone player who will, you know, is successful in Arena in the past and will continue to be successful in Constructed if he keeps at it. So very impressive run from him so far. Pistas unfortunately falls down again, but you know, cards on the table. I genuinely don't think he's taking this tournament as seriously as some of the other players.
And that's his choice at the end of the day.
It's perfectly fine, and the results are playing that out. So.
That they are. Well, if you've had enough of Savannah Hymens, if you've had enough of Swashbucklers, and if you've had enough of Sona and Sutil, we are done for the evening. It's been a superb cast. I very much enjoyed it. Thank you very much for casting with me, Sottle. Got your name right in the end. But make sure you guys tune in on Monday and Tuesday for the UK Masters League of Legends, on Wednesday and Thursday for the UK Masters CSGO, and next Friday as well for more UK Masters Hearthstone. I've been Sona, this has been Sottle, and that's it for tonight.
So Game have said they're going to send someone around to do some cool stuff to my room for their next deal. It's pretty exciting. Game are cutting prices in half, with up to 50% off loads of games and accessories. Yep, hilarious Game, really funny. I mean, what am I supposed to do with that?